Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and click on that like button if you like my video. Also click on that notification bell. Thank you.
Hello everyone, and welcome to my course, Linux Troubleshooting course. This course is designed for people who are already in IT or people who actually trying to get into IT who have the basic to somewhat advanced knowledge of Linux already. Now they want to refine their skills in terms of how they could troubleshoot regular everyday issues to the advanced level troubleshootings. I have included pretty much a lot of things that actually a system administrator or an engineer experiences in their life, in their career life. So that's about my course. Now let me tell you about myself. My name is Imran Afzal and I have almost 17 years of experience in IT field, primarily in system administration, system engineering, and systems management. I have bachelor's degree in computer information system from Baruch College, City University of New York, and I have a master's degree, MBA, from New York Institute of Technology. So that's what pretty much about me, and thank you again for clicking into my course and enrolling in my course. So good luck to you.
Hello everyone and welcome to the course syllabus. This is where you have to spend a few minutes and then decide whether this is the right course for you. I'm going to cover exactly what I am or what I have included in this entire training. The first section is about the introduction and course overview. This is the introduction which I'm already going through. This is about what the whole course entails, what are the things included, the syllabus overview which I'm going through right now with you, and after that if you decide to enroll you could download the syllabus. Section 2 is about troubleshooting best practices, meaning what are the policies that you should follow, what are the standards that you should follow, do the documentation and go through the ticketing process, patient to work with users and groups. When people actually work in a group, you probably experience that other groups or other departments start finger pointing at each other. Then how you should act to avoid situations like that. Get online help, understanding the issue before making a decision. Involve the vendor if there is a need or if you cannot resolve, at what point you have to pick up a phone and call your vendor. The log monitoring, and be honest and ask questions. The third section is about setting up a lab. We'll cover up about what is a VirtualBox, installing Oracle VirtualBox, creating first virtual machine, and doing the Linux installation. Now, of course, if you already have a Linux machine, like a lab Linux machine where you could practice this training, that you do not have to go through this entire section. You could just simply skip through it and practice all those lectures and all those troubleshooting commands that I will show you in your lab setup. But if you don't, that's fine. Just follow this section and I'll show you exactly how you could run a Linux machine. Then we'll talk about the conceptual troubleshooting. Who is who, meaning which server. When someone reports a problem, how do you know which server they're talking about? Who is the source? Who is the target? Who is the client? Who is the server? And what protocol they are using. Cannot access a server, cannot install a Linux machine. Linux virtual machine are running slow. Then section 5, system access troubleshooting. Many times people have problem when they cannot access a system or cannot log into the system. So what are the topics we will cover is about server is not reachable. Cannot connect to a website or an application. Cannot SSH as root or a specific user. Firewall issue. Terminal client is not working. Cannot connect using PuTTY via VirtualBox. By the way, all these topics that I'm covering is all based on real life examples which I have experienced in my life, which my students actually have experienced in their life or during taking my course. Section 6 is about file system troubleshooting. cannot cd into the file, cannot open a file or run a script, having trouble finding files and directories, cannot create links, cannot write to a file, cannot delete, copy, move, or rename a file, cannot change file permission or view other user files. As you notice, I have included cannot word on every lecture because this course is all about troubleshooting, and when you cannot do certain things, that's where you have to come in and do the troubleshooting. Disk space full or add more disk and create standard partition. Continuing section 6, add disk and create standard partition when you run out of disk. How you could add a disk and create LVM partition. Extend disk using LVM partition. How to delete old files. File system is corrupted. Then how you could fix it. Corruption in HCFS tab. Scripts to delete old files. And then of course in section 6 we have handouts where you could review some of the documentation that I have attached. Section 7 is the biggest section, which is we are talking about system administration troubleshooting. That could involve anything that you have to deal with your system, which is like running out of memory, add swap space, system rebooted or process restarted. How do you know? Unable to get an IP address, networking issues, IP assigned but I cannot reach it. Again, networking issues, having trouble using VI editor, cannot run certain commands, cannot change password. Moving on the same section of system administration, user account has no home directory. How do you troubleshoot? How to change every instance of a word in a file? How to use set command, because set command is very powerful, so I have included in this as a part of the troubleshooting. How to kill a user, terminal, or a process. Recover root password if you've forgotten about it. SOS report. List of users logged in by date. System is running slow. I have included so many commands in system running slow. When you're going to review this lecture, you will see I have included like TCP dump, top, df command, free command, iostat. So many commands that I cannot even list every one of them. Moving on to section 8, it's about system recovery. We'll talk about recover virtual system, recover physical system, and disaster recovery. Section 9, which is the last section, this is the bonus section. I have included many different lectures, but few of them that I have listed here that are about the file ownership, logs, soft link, hard link, curl, ping commands, program, service, network commands, scripts to delete old files, the difference between CentOS 5, 6, and 7, and many more. I cannot include all of them in bonus section, but I will be including many more. Again, this is my course syllabus. Please remember one thing. This course syllabus is not limited to what I have shown you just now. This will, and as I speak, I will be including many different lectures as I'm getting it feedback from my students. So hopefully you learn a lot from this course, and good luck to you. Welcome to my section number 2. This is where we'll talk about troubleshooting best practices. Like what is there, the exact rules that we need to follow in order to have the best troubleshooting. There are a few list of things that I will go over with you in this section, and those are not like a real troubleshooting that we will do, but there are a basic concept that you should, or basic format that everyone should follow to perform an effective troubleshooting. And those are, one of them is follow policies in place, meaning follow any policies that you have for your company, any standards that you have for your company. Follow that when you are going through the troubleshooting steps, whether it is opening up a ticket, notifying a certain person, or whatever the policy they have. You have to follow that before you actually start troubleshooting anything in the environment. Then we'll talk about the documentation or tracking, or a ticketing process. Documentation meaning if there is an issue, have we actually looked at any prior documentation, or are we going to document this existing issue? Is there any ticketing process? And 9 out of 10, every company has a ticketing system in their environment. Then we'll talk about the patience that you really need to work with users and groups, and how can we get that patience. That's the most important things when you are troubleshooting issues. If you get aggravated during the troubleshooting process, trust me, you're not going to get anything done. Then we'll talk about how you could get some online help. Online help is one of the biggest tools that I use it personally, and many other system administrators and engineers they use on a regular basis, so they could go online and look for solutions. We'll talk about understanding the issue before you make a decision. We'll talk about involving vendors whenever you need help, and the log monitor. There's so many logs that you have to monitor before you make a decision or before you make a change in your environment. And the last one, be honest and ask a question. You don't have to make up anything, and if you don't be afraid to ask any type of questions that you have. So these are the few things that I'll go over in this section. It is very important that you go over all of these slides with me and these topics, because that will really set your base to get starting on the troubleshooting lessons. Understanding the issue before making a decision. Many times we do make that mistake without knowing the exact error message, or without knowing the exact problem. We'll just come to a decision, or we just implement the change, and next thing you know, that was not the issue. So just make sure, ask yourself these questions. Who is the source? Meaning from where the issue is happening. Who is the target? What is the IP address or host name of the target? Same thing, what is the IP or host name of the source? What is the port number? Whenever there's a problem, I know there's always a source and target and port number is involved, because if it's communication issue from one server to another, then most likely that's the issue. But if it's an issue just with its own server, then you still need to know whether you are on the right server, whether what communication is being used, what kind of application issue it's having, who will be impacted. This is another thing that you need to ask yourself, is if you are making this change, alright, if it's a hasty decision and you're making this change, who is going to be impacted? Is it a test environment that you could revert back, or nobody's gonna be noticed? Okay, go right ahead, make a change, find out what will happen. If not, it will change it back. Nobody's gonna be noticing. But if it's a production environment, just be careful. Who do you need to notify? We covered that already. Make sure your boss knows about it, what you're doing, because he's the one at the end who actually is going to cover your back. He's going to stand behind you. He's going to say, okay, that's fine. This happened because I was aware of it. If you have not notified your boss, he cannot help you, and things could go wrong. Trace the issue. Again, to trace the issue, there's so many ways you could trace the issue from one system to another, from logs and whole bunch of stuff. So again, try to understand the issue before making your decision. I know sometimes people says, look, I'm very smart and I know I found out this issue right away, and they say that during the call, hey, I fixed it, or they just implemented, and then next thing you know, they feel bad. Oh, I shouldn't have said that because that's not the issue. Then what should I do now? Well, that's why, guys, again, I'm saying, please make sure you understand the issue thoroughly. Log monitor. This is also one of the most effective tool or way to troubleshoot issue. Log monitor, think of it a way as if you have, if you go to a hospital, you have a problem, or you just go to the hospital to visit someone, and you see at the end side of the bed there is a clipboard, and a clipboard has some papers attached to it. Every time a doctor comes in, they actually look at that log clip and they write something on it. And an anesthesia guy or a medication guy or someone comes, or a nurse comes to your room and give you medicine, they actually write that down, everything in the log. Have you noticed why they do that? Because the reason they do that, if something goes wrong, or if you start feeling pain, they would know exactly what was given to you. by whom, at one time, at what time, or if there's an opposite reaction to it. So these are the things that all captured in the log. Well, nowadays that probably clipboard thing is gone. Now they have all computerized system. Everything is recorded in the computer, but there is still and always going to be the log. Same way, similar fashion, in systems environment, infrastructure environment, we have logs. We need to monitor those logs. We need to check those logs for any errors or fatals or information or warnings that comes in. Those logs are systems logs, application logs, hardware logs, networking logs. These are the type of logs that are out there depending on the issue you are having. You need to look at those logs and trace those logs. What happened? Again, going back to my scenario, if your system is having issue communicating to database, you need to check your systems log and the database log and see where the disconnect is. That's called tracing the logs. For example, web server going to the application server going to the database server. This is an example I picked for the environment that is dealing with the retail web servers. So or anything that has a web server interface. When you go to www.google.com, they have a web server in front. In the middle layer they have an application server which has the engine running, and in the back end they have a database server. Every server that you see has a log, so you will trace those logs. Copy the log error and search it online. Those log errors, if you see a specific error message, see if you can find anything online regarding that. Save the logs before system reboot, because there are many logs that actually disappear when the system is rebooted. So the fact that you come back after the troubleshooting system is resolved, everybody's happy. Now you need to do a root cause analysis, and how you're going to do it when you have the logs, right? But if the logs are gone, then you have no way of finding it. So make sure you save the logs by a different name so the system reboot doesn't delete them. Involve vendors if needed. This is when the situation gets more critical. You're trying to resolve an issue and you cannot get it resolved. Then you have to actually escalate it to the higher experts who actually deal with these things almost every day. Call for critical issues. Have someone from your team reach out to vendors. What it means is, if you are troubleshooting the issue while you are in the middle of the call with people troubleshooting and see what's going on, you probably do not have enough time to hang up and pick up another phone and call the vendor and find out what happened. Because when you call the vendor, they will ask you a bunch of stuff, ask for the logs, so it will take some time. So if you are on another call already troubleshooting, ask someone in from your team to help you out to open up a ticket with the vendor. Upload logs and allow vendors to look through the logs. They will probably not gonna tell you right away, hey, the system is down, I know what the issue is, because again, as I said previously in my last slide, with the vendors as well, they actually look through the logs. They actually understand the issue before they make a decision or before they tell you what is wrong with it. They're not going to tell you right off the bat, hey, I know this issue and this is what happened with Thomson company or XYZ company as well, and this is what we did. No, they would never say that, because they know every company is different, every system is different. So same way you have to react the same way as well. Allow access to log into the system. Yes, of course, they will ask you to walk them through, share the screen, or even like sometimes people do have remote login access. And vendors do have it. They will log in. They will work with you alongside and see what the issue is. Set up a call between the vendors to avoid finger pointing. What it means is, if you have one vendor, let's say you have Red Hat, and then there is a database involved, and you have SQL Microsoft team involved, then the best thing, if they both are on different calls and they're saying, hey, this is not our issue or this is not our issue, then what do? The best thing you do is you merge the calls together or set up one new conference call and tell them to join the call. And they always do that. If vendors are not afraid to do that, they are open to it and they will join the call right away. Or if you have a call already going on internal, you could open it up to your vendor as well and have them come in and take a look. Don't be afraid the vendor is coming in and you have a security risk. No, vendors are already they already got your contract, they already got your confidence, so don't worry about sharing information with them. Record all vendor ticket notes and numbers because you need that when you are putting together the incident report or a post-mortem report or any type of documentation you're putting together after the fact when you resolve the issue. Getting online help. Well, for me, this is one of the most efficient tool to get your issue resolved because 9 out of 10 the issue that you're having, someone else had the same issue. So go online and search for it. So before we do that, and if you have never done it, you select a preferred search engine, meaning are you going to use Google, Yahoo, or whatever that is. Just stick with one. Look for specific error in messages. When you're sticking up a message on search, do not type like my server is down. So what are you gonna get? You're probably gonna get tons of article and that's gonna go nowhere. Basically pick the exact error message that you're getting and put it in there, and then you will see that you're gonna get so many related articles out there that is only specific to your search, or maybe it's gonna go more and more and more narrow down if you try to search for specific error. If you do not have an error, then put your search specific to your environment, meaning say server is down in Linux environment, server is down in Linux Red Hat, server is down in Linux Red Hat version 7, server is down in Linux Red Hat 7.5. See how much narrowing it down? That's how you're gonna get the exact same problem, and if someone has the same issue. Sign up for Linux community forums. There are so many community forums out there. I will recommend you to go sign up. Not only because you wanted to get helped and troubleshoot your issues, but also help others as well. And you know, as they say, what goes around comes around. If you help many people out there, you will get helped, and it's just a karma thing that I believe. All right, ask question if you cannot find your answer. Meaning, if you are searching for something, you can't find the exact answer, then there are forums there that you could put an answer, you could put your question on. If you have a support with the vendor, then perfect that you go there. If not, some people just wait. If it's not critical, they just post a question online and they just wait for the answer. And I tell you, you'll be amazed how many answers you're gonna get. People actually jump on the question and answer that. Then moving on, be aware of security issues though. So that's a other side of reality. Getting online help is very good, but there is a dark side of it as well, and that is a security risk. Do not let anyone log into your system. If someone is willing to help you and they said, hey, why not let me log in and see what's going on, you don't know the person, of course. I'm sure you know that. This is a basic ABC. You're probably not going to let anybody come in. Other thing is hide your IP address or hostname. If you are copying a string from your log, most likely it will have a hostname to it or IP address to it. Just dark it out or just simply take it out and then search for it, or then send a message to someone to look for it. Do not search online from the server which is having issue. Meaning if your server A is having issue and you're getting online from that server, don't do that. Go from a server, your own laptop, not the ones that are actually the server, the production environment server. Do not send any documents that has company information, which I mean like sometimes you have a notepad or word pad that you want to share with people. Do not send that. I wouldn't recommend that. Sometimes those documents, if you go to detail of that document, you'll see the company name and when it was created, your name, and a whole bunch of information. Do not download a file or script and run it in your environment. You're probably gonna see helpful articles. Hey, this issue can be resolved if you download this file and run it. A lot of times you'll find these type of things in Windows, not as much in Linux, but of course keep an eye on it, be aware of it. do not download anything or any script, or even if you think that script will help you resolve the issue, don't do that if you're working in the corporate environment. And the last thing I have, make sure to add a thank you note to a helpful article. If you found that and one of the article helped you resolve the issue, that is perfect. Please do thank the person who actually put that article together or actually helped someone else resolve the issue. Send one more thank you to him or her, saying that you did resolve my issue as well too. So it's just to put a smile on his or her face. All right. Follow policies and standards. Let's look at over what are the things that we should follow when you are working in a corporate environment. The first thing is communication. Communication is the most important things that you should do or notify the users or your boss or management that what is being done to the system or why you are troubleshooting or what happened, why there is a failure. So communication is the key. So find out how you could communicate. Is there a specific tool that you have to use to notify user, or do you just simply have to send an email? These are the things you have to follow. Then involve the right people. Involving the right people meaning, do you have to notify your boss, or do you have to notify your boss's boss? Do you have to notify, if you're working in a customer environment, do you have to notify the implementation managers or the engagement managers? Anybody who actually deal directly with the customers, do you have to let them know that the customer system is down? Then open up a ticket. If they have a ticketing platform, and I said before, 9 out of 10, every company has a ticketing platform where they open up a ticket if there's any issue. Or you could open up a ticket if you are doing a maintenance. If you open up a ticket if you are upgrading certain system. So you need to use a ticket for everything. So same thing for troubleshooting. If you are troubleshooting anything, you need to find out if you need to open up a ticket. Sometimes if it is critical issue and impacting more than one customer or more than one stakeholder, then you will require to open up a ticket. Resolution techniques or method. What are the techniques that you need to follow? The resolution method. Do you have to go through a certain procedure to access system console, system ILO? Do you have to notify someone? Is there a specific password? So these are the resolution techniques or method. Do we have to go from A to Z, the format, or you could just jump in to the machine and find out what happened and start troubleshooting? You have to know the method. Maintenance schedule. Like, is your company following the maintenance schedule? Like, they only do maintenances on the weekend, or are they doing maintenances only on the week? Sometimes people don't like to do maintenance on Friday or on the weekend. So these are the things you need to find out when you're doing maintenance or even troubleshooting. Let's say the reason I'm bringing this up is because if you are troubleshooting an issue and during the troubleshooting you are being told by the vendor, or you just find out from an article that you need to upgrade in order to fix this issue. Now the upgrade of course requires a maintenance window. That maintenance window, if you are troubleshooting an issue on the weekend and the only maintenance takes place is during the week, then you need to know these things. Approval process. Who approves the process? If you need to apply a patch, or if you need to troubleshoot something that is related to an upgrade, you need to know what the approval process is. Sorry, I went a little ahead. So these are the few things that you need to follow in terms of following policies and standards. Next one we have in line is the documentation or ticketing process. That is one of my favorite part because I strongly believe anything that is documented correctly, it will always help you down the road. Meaning if I have an issue today and I document that issue can reoccur maybe a year from now or 10 years from now. We could always go back to that ticket or always go back to that document and see exactly what happened. It is just the same way if you are a lawyer and you are actually fighting a case. lawyers do that many times, that they go back to certain incident or certain verdicts that took place in the past, and they bring it up as an example. In 1988, this judgment what took place because of that. How do they know that? Because there is a documentation of every trial that took place. Same thing, same format we wanted to follow here. We have to have a documentation of every troubleshooting or every issue that we have. Whether you do a documentation like a raw document on a Word format, or you're doing a ticketing process. So look for any existing documentation your company has. And I'm telling you, every company has documentation. If they do not have any kind of proper documentation, then this is your time to shine. Start creating documents, start creating fancy documents, put a process together how an issue takes place. So if an issue comes in, then how do you troubleshoot? Who do we notify? All that comes in a documentation. If they have a ticketing system, put that together in a ticketing system. They probably have a wiki. A lot of companies do have Wikipedias and internal ones. Look for the documentation in there. If they don't, go ahead and post your article in there. Ticketing system, as we discussed, 9 out of 10 people do have ticketing system, postmortem or incident report. Many big companies, every time there's an issue, they would require you to put a postmortem or an incident report together. An incident report is something like which will give you a brief summary of what exactly happened and what steps that were taken to resolve the issue. If your company does not have any of these documents, again, start creating one. Incident report, you could find it online as in templates that you could put together. So you could follow that. Root cause analysis. This is also some of the things that people follow. The root cause analysis, maybe not at the time when issue happened, after the fact when issue took place. So everybody come together on a call and they try to find out what exactly happened and what can be done to prevent issues like that. So please go through this root cause analysis with your boss. If they do not have a process in place like that, tell them this is something that you wanted to come up with. That every time there's an issue, especially critical issue, you wanted to create a call. And that call includes all the team members that were involved during the troubleshooting, and yourself, your manager, and someone else who could document all that. Put together the root cause analysis, what happened and what can be done to actually mitigate that issue. So you need to find that out if they have that in place. If not, again, there are many tools online that you could look into and to find out if there are any tools that can provide you the format of root cause analysis. Document vendor recommendation. So if there are any recommendation from the document, meaning you're troubleshooting issue and the vendor says, hey, you're actually working on version 2.0 and you need to upgrade it to 2.5 in order to fix this issue, then you need to document that, and then of course present that to your manager or whoever the whatever the approving procedure is. Then training. Of course, the training comes the last. The reason because you went through the whole incident, you went through the whole troubleshooting, you fixed the issue, you documented the issue. Now the training comes in for those people who were not involved in this troubleshooting, or who are your juniors or subordinates, or even your peers. You need to sit together with them and have a discussion that what exactly happened and what you did and what should be avoided that you did that actually going to make the whole process more efficient. So this is why I focus more on documentation and ticketing system, because it actually provides a huge ton of value to your troubleshooting and of course to your documentation skills as well. Okay, the last one of the list we have is about being honest and ask question. What it means is, if you made a mistake, just admit it. Yes, tell everybody, yes, you did something to the system, or you were doing something, or you were performing maintenance, and then you accidentally rebooted the system, or you accidentally did something on the configuration file that caused the issue. So please admit it. People actually appreciate the honesty. They will tell you that's fine. We understand mistakes happen. And then what's the course of action? They'll ask you, and they will appreciate you down the road. Then don't make up for if you have not find the problem. If you think that you are troubleshooting an issue and you have not come to a conclusion, an hour already passed or 2 hours passed, just don't say anything just to make the other person feel better, in terms of like you have to lie. Hey, you know what? I found the issue. This is the issue about one of the HTTP configuration file has this type of problem, and you have no clue you're saying that. Just be honest about it. Tell them, hey, listen, it's been 2 hours. I understand. I'm trying my best. I'm going to involve. I'm going to escalate it if there's a need to it. So just simply don't make up the stuff. Don't be afraid to ask questions. We covered that already. If you need to ask question, ask your boss, ask your subordinates, ask your peers what it is stands for. If you know, if there's an acronym in there, you need to know what that acronym stands for. Ask them. That is fine. Sometimes, a new person that is new to the system, there's so much application systems related things in there that you probably don't understand. That is okay. You ask them. Don't think, hey, if I ask for acronym for even, let's say, HTTP, right? It's sometime it has Apache to it, and you say, hey, I'm looking for Apache.log, but there's no Apache.log, there's HTTP.log. So there are things when it might confuse you, but it's okay. You could ask question what they stands for. How the issue was reported, you could tell them, hey, I was just sitting and I saw this alert coming in, or someone else reported to me. Don't say that, hey, I was the one who found that issue. Why do you think this it's related to Linux server or Linux related issue? How the issue is resolved. So that's one of the things that you have to tell. I have seen people in the past when the issue is resolved on its own, and they just say, oh yes, it's resolved because we did something to resolve. No, there are issues, there are situations when somehow magically issues gets resolved, and you will never find out. So just be honest about that. Tell people, tell the users, hey, the issue got resolved itself. You have no clue how it got resolved, but you will definitely look into it to find out what was the issue and how it got resolved. It's just that simple, and then you move on with your life. All right. Okay. Hello everyone, and welcome to our lab setup section. This is a section where we are going to actually set up our lab. A lab is where we are going to perform our certain troubleshooting tasks, because this training is all about troubleshooting, right? And we need some type of operating system, specifically Linux, where we could perform troubleshootings. So how we are going to set up a lab? So this is what I'm going to cover in this section. The first thing we will do is we will cover the virtual environment. What exactly a virtual environment is, how a virtual machine runs on a physical machine, how multiple virtual machines can run on one physical machine. Then I will cover the Oracle VirtualBox, meaning there are so many other virtualization technology, for example, VMware, Microsoft Hyper-V, Citrix virtualization, Red Hat virtualization. There are so many of them. I am picking Oracle VirtualBox because it's very simple, straightforward. If you prefer any other virtualization technology, please be my guest to use that. Then the next topic we'll cover is about installing Oracle VirtualBox. I will take you to the website of Oracle VirtualBox. We will together download the software. Once the download is completed, it will go through the installation and the configuration of Oracle VirtualBox. That Oracle VirtualBox will allow us to give us a platform where we could run virtual machines. So the next step would be is to create our first virtual machine once we have the Oracle VirtualBox set up. That virtual machine will be set up for our Linux environment. So the next step would be is to install Linux on that virtual machine. And the Linux that I have picked, the flavor of the Linux is CentOS. Now, CentOS is similar to Red Hat, and Red Hat has the biggest market share in corporate environment. That is why I am picking Red Hat or CentOS operating system for this entire training session. So, one thing I do want to mention, if you already have a lab setup, or if you already have a machine, a virtual machine or physical machine that is running Linux, whether it is Ubuntu, CentOS, SUSE, or any other, and that you want to prefer to use it for this entire training session, then just simply skip this section because you don't need to set up the lab, you don't need to set up the Oracle VirtualBox, you already have a Linux machine. If you do not, then simply go through all these steps and let's get started. What is Oracle VirtualBox? And of course, why do we need to know about VirtualBox? Well, for this course, you do need to install CentOS Linux operating system on your computer, and there are two ways you could install it. One, you could remove the existing operating system that you have on your computer, or you could install VirtualBox on top of your existing Windows operating system or Mac, and then you could install CentOS, so this way you won't lose anything. So basically, VirtualBox is a free and open source hypervisor for x86 computers currently being developed by Oracle Corporation. It installs on your existing Intel or AMD based computers, whether they are running Windows, Mac, Linux, or Solaris. It extends the capabilities of your existing computer so that it can run multiple operating systems on one hardware at the same time. Let's see how it works. So you have the hardware layer, and then on top of it you install the operating system. Of course, it could be any one you have, that is Windows or Mac. And then you install Oracle VirtualBox. It's just a program, a software that you install on your machine like any other software that you would install. Once you have installed Oracle VirtualBox, then you could install Linux on it as a separate small version of operating system. You could have Windows on it, or you could have Mac on it. So this VirtualBox allows you to have multiple operating system on the same hardware.
Hey folks, and welcome back. In this video, we are going to download and install Oracle VirtualBox software. So, if you go through step by step, the very first step is, of course, we have to open up your internet browser and visit www.virtualbox.org. Then the next step is go to its download page and find where is the download page on the navigation bar, and then you will see the most recent software that you could download. All right, once the software is downloaded, the next step is, of course, to execute it and go through the installation and configuration procedure of the software. Okay, very simple and straightforward. So let's start up our browser. Now, of course, pick the browser of your choice. I'm going to go with Google Chrome. So I'll go type Chrome. And here I will type it in www.oracle, sorry, virtualbox.org, and it will bring me to this page. Let me move this up. All right, this page will give you the welcome to virtualbox.org, some information about it. I want you to go to the navigation pane and right here click on downloads. Okay, when you are on the download page, right here it says VirtualBox 7.0.10 platform packages. Now, depending when you are watching this video, the version might have changed. So it doesn't really matter if the version is changed to a higher version. All you have to do is download this virtual software, the most recent one. Okay, then which platform? Are you using Windows machine where you're going to be downloading this? Then yes, click on this one. Are you using Mac? Are you using other Linux distribution or Solaris distribution? So for us, in our case, we have a Windows machine, so we'll click on Windows host. Okay, Once you click on it, it will start the download, and of course, the download process is very fast. It has already downloaded, see right here, and it downloads to my desktop. Okay, so now where is my desktop? So let's go to my desktop. All right, right here on my desktop, you see this is the executable file that it has downloaded. Now go ahead and double click on it so it could start the installation procedure. All right, the first thing is, do you want to allow this app to make changes to your device? Yes, of course, because we want to go through the installation. Okay, next step is welcome to the Oracle VM VirtualBox version setup wizard. This setup wizard will install Oracle VM and so on. Click next. Okay, select the way you want features to be installed. I want you to leave everything default. Now, you could customize it depending on your requirement, but again, since we are doing it for the first time, and this is for our lab, we're gonna leave everything as is and just simply click next. Warning, network interfaces. Installing the Oracle VM VirtualBox in networking feature will reset your network connection and temporarily disconnect you from the internet. Proceed with installation now. Now, before you click yes, make sure you're not running any type of like important downloads or program in the background that will interrupt the network connectivity. If it is, go stop it and then come back and then do click yes. But of course, again, this is a lab. We know we are not running anything, so go ahead and click yes. Missing dependencies, Python core. If you're getting these messages, that's fine. It will install these dependencies as well, so click yes. All right, begin installation, ready to install? Yes, go ahead and click yes or install. Okay, Oracle VM VirtualBox 7010. Please wait while the setup wizard installs Oracle VM VirtualBox. This may take some time. Of course, for me, it's took literally like 15 seconds. All right, Oracle VM VirtualBox installation is complete. Click Finish, Start Oracle VirtualBox. If it's checked, then it will start the program right away. So click Finish, and it will start the Oracle VirtualBox application right now. All right, let's see if it is running on our tray or task manager. Yes, it is. See right here, it is running. Okay, so here it is Oracle VM VirtualBox. This is how the Oracle VirtualBox after installation, the portal will look like. Now, this portal allows you to create a new virtual machines, add existing ones if you already have it, import it, export it, and all these features you could go through one by one and understand. But of course, our main focus of this course is not to learn the virtualization software, but to actually learn Linux. So I'm going to leave that little piece of learning with you. If you want to explore more, go through it and learn it. But for now, we'll stop here and we'll go to the next video. In the next video, we will go ahead and create a new virtual machine so that virtual machine can have Linux operating system on it for our lab environment so we could practice Linux commands on it.
In this lecture, we are going to cover the Oracle VirtualBox. We will go through the download and the installation of VirtualBox. Now, as I said previously, the Oracle VirtualBox is is a virtual environment which allows you to run a multiple operating system on the same hardware. There are other virtual platform that is available out there that you could use. You don't have to go with VirtualBox if you don't like it. You could use VMware Player, VMware Player Workstation, as well as other open source virtual environment. But anyway, I would prefer if you stick with Oracle VirtualBox, so this way we could go through the course together. Alright, so I will go open up my Firefox browser so I could download the VirtualBox software. You could use any browser you like. Then I'm going to the Google page, and in the Google page, I'm searching for Oracle VirtualBox. When you click on it, you're going to see the first link as Oracle VM VirtualBox. So you could click on it and then go to download, or you could go straight to the download page. All right, on the download page, you're going to see the section where it says VirtualBox version platform packages. Now, depending on when you are downloading this VirtualBox, the version will be higher, maybe 1, 2, or whichever the version at that time you're downloading. It doesn't matter. Don't be confused. Oh, the one I am showing you is 6.0 and the one you are seeing is a different version. Basically, what we want at the end is a virtual platform that we could run our guest instances or guest operating system on it. Anyway, if you are using the Windows as your main host, wherever you will run the Linux CentOS as a VM, then pick Windows host. If you are using OS X host, meaning if you are using Apple, then you could use this one. For Linux, for Solaris, for other operating systems, you could pick depending on your requirement of your actual operating system. Go ahead and click on Windows host because I am running Windows host and that's where I'm going to run my VirtualBox. Now here it is asking me to save the file and you could click, but I'm not going to click to save the file because I have already saved it to save some time. So if you have not saved it previously, so go ahead and click on this and it will ask you to the location to save it. So I'm going to cancel it since, as I said, I have already saved it. Alright, I have my VirtualBox executable saved on my desktop, and here is the executable. All I have to do is go ahead and double click so it could start the installation. So once you double click on it, it will ask you, do you want to run this file? Click on Run. Okay, now the wizard has started. It says, welcome to the Oracle VM VirtualBox 6.0.14 setup wizard. The setup wizard will install Oracle VM VirtualBox on your computer. Click next to continue or cancel to exit the setup wizard. Go ahead and click next. Select the way you want features to be installed. So by default, the VirtualBox application has been selected and the other features that comes with it, I'm going to leave everything at default, and it also tells you the version installing the feature requires 227 megabyte that you should have on your disk. So go ahead and click next. Please choose from the options below. Create start menu entry, create a shortcut on desktop, create a shortcut on quick launch bar, register file association. I like them all, leave them default, except I don't like create a shortcut in quick launch bar. So I'm going to uncheck it. Again, that's my preference. You could leave all of them selected. Click next. Network warning, network interface. Installing the Oracle VM VirtualBox networking feature will reset your network connection and temporarily disconnect you from the network. Proceed with installation. So that's fine. So make sure you are not connected to the internet, or if you are, make sure you're not doing any type of work that you will lose. So go ahead and click yes, and click install to begin the installation. Install. I am going to fast forward at this part because I don't want you to wait. I don't want to waste your time. So I'm going to just simply fast forward. Okay, so the Oracle VM VirtualBox installation is complete. You can leave the check mark so it'll start it back up, and you could click on Finish. Congratulations, you have completed the download and the installation of Oracle VirtualBox. Now the next step is to create a test virtual machine, and then of course we will go ahead and do the actual operating system install on that virtual machine. Hello and welcome to CentOS installation. This is the fun part. Yes, this is where we're gonna get our hands dirty. We're gonna go ahead and download the CentOS ISO image file from the internet. Once we have it downloaded, then we'll go through the installation, a complete installation of CentOS Linux operating system. So are you ready? So now I want you to go ahead and open up your browser, any browser that you prefer, whether it's IE, Firefox, or Chrome. So let's go in. I have my browser open already. Um, I will go into Google. Now, the second step is you could use Google or any search engine that you like. And I want you to type CentOS download and hit enter. Once you hit enter, you will get the first link. I want you to go ahead and click on it, or you could simply go ahead and click on download. But first, let's go to this first link. So on the first link or the first page, you will see download CentOS. Now, sometimes you will see three options in this page. One is a DVD ISO, second one is everything DVD ISO, and third one is minimal. You might also see CentOS Linux DVD ISO or CentOS Stream DVD ISO. Again, the website changes the way it looks time to time. What you need to pick the one that has a Linux DVD ISO. If you are seeing three or if you're seeing two right now, it doesn't matter because what we need is DVD ISO. So go ahead and click on DVD ISO. This will bring you to the links where the ISO images are saved. So go ahead and pick any one of your choice. I would recommend that you pick the first one. Now, if your screen shows CentOS version 8 instead of version 7, then it's perfectly fine. You could go ahead and pick version 8 because version 8 installation is very similar to version 7. Once you click on the first one, it will ask you or prompt you to save the file. You have to save the file to the location, so go ahead and click OK. If you do not know where the file is being saved, you see this little arrow here. If you are using the Firefox, you will see this little arrow here. Click on it and it will tell you that it is being downloaded right now. I do not want to download because I have already downloaded that file previously because I don't want it to waste time, your time and my time to go through the complete download. So let's minimize this page. Let's go to our desktop because all my downloads go into my desktop. Now you already have the CentOS file. Okay, now I want you to go ahead and click on or double click on your Oracle VirtualBox, the icon you have on your desktop. If you do not have that icon on your desktop, then you go to the start menu and find that up, and you will go ahead and start from here. When it opens up, you will see the My First Linux VM, the one we created earlier. These two, you're probably not going to see it because I was playing around with some Windows virtual machine. Anyways, you could just ignore them. Click on the My First Linux VM and click on Start. Now this is powering up your virtual machine. This is exactly the same way as if you powering on your physical machine by pressing the button on it. So now it is asking, since this virtual machine has no operating system, so by default it's asking you to attach a virtual disk to it. So it is asking where is the location of that virtual disk which you want to install that operating system. So go ahead and click on this little icon which will browse us to our desktop where we have our ISO image saved. Click on this little one and you will see right here on our desktop folder, when you click on our desktop, you come down and you will see right here it says CentOS 7, which we have downloaded a few minutes ago. So go ahead and click on Open and click on Start. By the way, this top thing right here is telling you have option to capture keyboard option turn on. This will cause the virtual machine to automatically capture. You could just go ahead and cancel it. Now it's telling you at this screen, it's telling you this is a CentOS 7. Install CentOS 7, test this media and install CentOS 7, or do the troubleshooting. Right now, by default, test this media and install CentOS 7 is selected. You do not want to test this media. Usually this option is picked when you have a DVD install. And the reason we do the test, because sometimes the DVD have scratches on it. That's why we wanted to go through the test. So since this is ISO image, we don't do that. So go ahead and hit up arrow key on your keyboard, and it will select or highlight the top one. It says install CentOS 7. And now go ahead and hit enter. It is actually bringing the ISO image, copying the files that are needed to actually install the operating system. So it will go through certain startup processes. It will start up the GUI that will allow us to go through the installation of the Linux CentOS operating system. We will give it a minute for the GUI to come up. See right here it says starting installer, one moment, and the installer, the GUI itself, is called Anaconda. This is the name they have given. Why? I don't know, but this is the name. If you wanted to keep in mind, you just remember that Anaconda is the GUI tool or the GUI wizard that will help you to install the Linux operating system. Now you are on the welcome to CentOS 7 welcome page. What language would you like to use during the installation? By default, English, and I am in United States, so I'll pick English, United States. If you are in any other country, I will recommend that you pick that country, or if you want to pick a different language, you could pick that. However, I am not going to tell you how you could go through the installation with different language. Anyway, so I would prefer that you stay on English, and then you could pick a different country. Now go ahead and click on continue at the bottom right. Okay, so now it says please complete items marked with this action, this icon, before continuing to the next step. Now the date and time is the first one. We have already pre-selected America's New York time zone. If you want to change the time zone depending on which time zone you are in, go ahead and click on it and change the time zone. Keyboard, it by default it selects English and US. Language support, again English, United States. Installation source, local media, which means that we are installing the operating system through the local ISO image. So it's already been selected. Perfect. Next stop, software selection. This is where it has by default the software selection as minimal install. If you leave that as is minimal install, then it will install the Linux operating system, but it will not have any GUI on it. Well, remember one thing, most of the time in corporate environment there are no GUI on Linux. But since we are going through some practice, we will go through some GUI practices as well, because I do want you to know how GUI works in Linux as well. So we'll go ahead and click on software selection, and that's where we will pick a couple of different additional software that are required. In the minimum install, we have other options as well. If you wanted to use system administration tools or any other tools, you could pick them. We could leave as default. Compute node, anything, any debugging tools, directory clients, hardware monitoring tools, development tools. Most of these tools are used by developers. Since we are not going through the development training, we will leave that as is. Infrastructure server. What type of server are we going to run on this machine? I will tell you, you could pick any one that you think you might need it later on. You could pick the DNS server for now, because we are going to cover DNS, which is bind, in this training. So you could pick DNS. If you do not pick DNS server at this time, there is no issue. We could always install DNS server or package later on. But anyway, just to show you how it works, I just selected one DNS name server. Anything else that you wanted to select here, you could. If you don't want to, just follow my lead. Then let's go to the next one, says file and print server. You could leave everything as is. As said, basic web server, we don't need it. Virtualization host, no. Server with GUI. Yes, this is where we have to come in. And if you notice, as you are going down, all the other options that were available on the base environments are actually added here as well. So don't worry about it. They are repetitive. It's not that this option will have a different DNS server and with this base environment. So right now we are in the server with GUI environment. I want you to go down and pick KDE, which is KDE is a Plasma workspace, a highly configured graphical user interface. I also want you to pick Java platform because if we are running certain application that requires Java, we could bring that up. Let's see what we have. We have all the virtualization tool. Um, okay, I think we are good here with the KDE. Now the next one is Genome Desktop. Now Genome Desktop are the desktop that also provide some type of applications for the user. Let's say if you wanted to use Firefox or if you wanted to use calculators or something on the GUI side, then you could select this desktop as well. So go ahead and click on Genome Applications. Any other tools we need? Internet application, email, chat, video conferencing software. We don't want that because most likely in corporate environment you will not be using any of these. KDE Plasma Workstation, Workspaces, Development and Creative Workstation, and that's pretty much it. You don't really need any other applications or add-ons for the selected environment. Now go ahead and click Done. Now you will see this option right here it will tell you checking software dependency. It means it is going to our ISO image and asking that ISO image, hey, this user has selected these many packages. Do you have these packages for me to install on this operating system? It's going to say, hey, okay, no problem. Let me go ahead and check that. So it's checking the source and it's checking the software dependency as well. So what is needed for those add-ons that we need to install. Installation destination, while it's running, we'll go to the next one. It says installation destination. Now, how do we want to partition our disk? Installation destination right now it says automatic partitioning selected. If you want to change that, meaning right now we have 10 gig, this is the disk size that we selected when we were creating the virtual machine. This disk size has shown up here is telling us we have 10 gig of disk space. How do you want to partition it? We are telling it automatically configure the partitioning. If you know or if your organization has a requirement to partition a disk into different slices or different partitioning, then you will go ahead and click on I will configure partitioning. Now go ahead and click on Done. Next one is KDump. KDump is enabled if something goes wrong. K means kernel. If there is something wrong with your system, a kernel is going to write some messages, some logs that is often referred in Linux language as a dump. That is enabled. So it's always a good practice to leave that enabled. So this way, if you are troubleshooting with your vendor, let's say if you have CentOS, Red Hat involved, they could go ahead and take a look at your logs. Next one we have is networking and hostname. Okay, we are on a network and hostname configuration. At the bottom you'll see hostname. Go ahead and highlight what we have right now and hit delete and type in the host name of the Linux operating system. We'll type the same one as we picked for our VM, my first Linux VM, and click on apply. As soon as you click on apply, you'll see the current host name will change to the host name that you have picked. Now the second thing is to configure the Ethernet. Now remember, by default, if your machine or your virtual machine, this is your virtual machine, if it is running on a PC that has 1 gig of network port, it will show up here as speed 1 gig. And right now it is showing it's wired for me because I have selected, or my machine where I'm running this virtual machine is wired. So go ahead and click on configure, and by default it will show up the tab as Ethernet ENP0S3 is the name of our network adapter. So we'll click on general, and we'll click automatically connect to this network when it is available. The rest of the setting is blacked out by default. You could leave as default. IPv4 setting is the setting for automatic DHCP. If you want to assign an IP, then you would have to change it to manual, but we want the IP to be assigned automatically, so we will leave it as is. And then the last one is IPv6 settings. We don't use that right now, so go ahead and click on save. So once you click on save, you will see it tells you automatically connected. It is given an IP already, and now you could go ahead and click on done. Okay, and so our network and host name has been configured. Now the last part is security profile. No profile is selected. You could leave that as is unless your organization has a specific procedure to put it in place for security policies. Then you could define it here. But for now, you could just leave as is and go ahead and click on begin installation. Once you click on begin installation, you will see at the bottom it will start creating your partitions that were selected, that you asked the system to select it for you. Now it's going to starting package installation process. While this is going through the package installation, we have two user settings to define. First is root password. So go ahead and click on root password is not set, and here you would have to put in the root password. Pick anything that you will remember. If you notice, I picked a weak password. You should pick a strong password if you're working for a company or if you are in an organization. But if you are just following my lab or you're doing this everything as a tutorial, that is fine. You could pick a weak password. However, if you notice at the bottom it says the password you have provided is weak. The password fails the directory check. It is based on a dictionary word, which you will have to press done twice to confirm. So okay, I understand it is a weak password. In order for me to keep that password, I have to press done twice. 1, 2. Now it has taken that weak password. User creation. Let's go ahead and create our first user. Full name. Let's put in our first name. By default, Linux takes the first name as the first letter, first initial. Last name is a complete last name. So for me, the username will be IMf&x. Keep your username shorter than 32 characters and you do not use spaces. That is fine. We are not using any spaces. We are only using 6 letters. Make this user administrator. You could leave that out. Requires a password to use this account. Yes. Let's pick a password. Again, it is weak, I understand, and I would have to do the same thing done twice. Okay, it is done. Now, if you come down and you notice right here, the operating system is installing, or this wizard is installing packages for this operating system. Total number of packages that are required to be installed are 1397. You might have a little more or a little less, but that's okay. It depends and it changes over time what other packages are installed, what other dependencies are installed. So again, if your packages do not match with my packages, do not panic. You are okay. So now you'll see it is going through the packages installation. At this point, it has installed almost 400 packages, and there's still about 800 packages that needs to be installed. And this process will take, I would say, somewhere between 10 minutes to 30 minutes. I am going to fast forward this entire process to save time. Now the packages installation has been completed. Now it is going through some post installation setup. Alright, finally our installation has been completed successfully. Now CentOS is now successfully installed and ready for you to use. Go ahead and reboot to start using it. Click on reboot. Once the system comes back online, it will give you the initial setup page. The first page is about licensing. You have to accept the license. Click accept license agreement and click on done. Network and host name. If you notice, we have already selected this network and host name configuration during our installation, so that you don't need to do it again. Click done. And right here it says finish configuration. Go ahead and click on finish configuration. Alright, finally our entire Linux installation has completed. Now we have to log in the first time. Click on your name, or you could also log in as root. If you remember, you have picked a root password, you would have to click on not listed and type in username root and password, but for now we'll go in as ourselves. And we will put in our password. Click on sign in or hit enter. Alright, this is the desktop. This is how it looks like in CentOS. It is very similar to Red Hat CentOS. You have these icons right here. You could resize them if you want to. You could delete any icon. You could create icon, and you could explore other things on the application and spaces. So also one more thing, when it starts up, it also gives you this welcome page. So you just leave as English. Go ahead and click on next. Typing, if you want to change anything, you could leave it default. Location services, I usually keep it off. If you want to leave it on, it's really up to you. Click next. Connect to online accounts, you don't have to do that. Click skip, and then start using CentOS Linux. So once again, congratulations. So now you know how to do the complete Linux CentOS installation. If you think that you missed something, then I would recommend you to go ahead and delete this entire Linux VM and go ahead and create a new virtual machine and do the Linux installation again from scratch. The more you do, the more practice you will do, the more you will learn. Alright, good luck. Creating virtual machine. In this lesson, we will create our first virtual machine, and on which we will be installing our CentOS Linux operating system. Well, virtual machine is basically nothing but a shell, a container which holds the information of a machine, CPU, memory, disk, and all the resources. This virtual machine is going to be sharing the resources wherever it is installed. So let's say if it is installed on my laptop, it will be sharing the resources from my laptop. The Oracle VirtualBox. I'm going to open it up. Okay, so this is the window for the Oracle VirtualBox. I'm gonna click on New. The name I will pick is My First Linux VM. And if you notice, the VirtualBox is smart enough to pick the operating system type and version for you. You probably notice that you probably not gonna see the 64-bit. You are probably seeing 32-bit. Now, if you are seeing a 32-bit, then either your computer is a 32-bit architecture, or the virtualization technology is not enabled. First, let's find out if my computer is 64 or not. So let's go to Start menu, computer, and I'm gonna click, right click, and go to properties. Once the property comes up, you will see here, it will tell you if it's Windows 7 PC. And right here, you're going to see where it says system type, it says 64-bit operating system. So that's one way, that's one of the reason that when I'm building my virtual machine, it is coming up 64-bit operating system. The second reason you might not going to see 64 is if you don't have virtual technology enabled in your BIOS setting. If that's the case, I have actually pasted an article in in this lesson, and there is a link to it. I would recommend that you could go to that link and try the settings that are recommended and see if it changes to 64 setting. I'm sure it will work. If not, you could always email me back. So I'm gonna leave these settings here. I'm gonna click next. Now here it's going to ask me the size of the memory I want to assign to this virtual machine. Now by default it's picking up 1 gig of memory. Now you should also keep in mind how much memory do you have actually in your laptop. So in my laptop I have, let's look at my computer again, right click, properties, and you will see here my computer has installed memory is 4 gig. So it is wise that I keep the memory below that digit, that number. So I have 4 gig, so I'm going to give 1 gig of that memory to this virtual machine. And click next. Create a new virtual disk. Yes, it will create a brand new virtual disk. Next, leave the default. Dynamically allocated, leave the default. Click close. Um, then this is the size of the disk. By default, it picks 8 gig. I want to pick 10 gig just to be safe. So I'm gonna just click inside of this box, remove, and type 10. And click create. And there you go. This is my first virtual machine that is created. Again, think of it as a piece of hardware that's been created for me. I'm on the assembly line. I'm putting the CPU, I'm putting the memory, I'm putting the hard disk, I'm putting everything in that machine, and I build that machine. So once the machine is built, what is the next step? Next step is to install the operating system. And in our course, we will be working with CentOS operating system. So I'm going to power this on and I'm going to install the operating system. But of course, before I go ahead and install the operating system, I do need the software ISO image. So in the next lecture, we will cover how we're going to download the ISO software and then how we could attach that software to this Linux VM, and then we will boot off of that software. In this video, we will go through our lab designing, the lab that we need to practice all the videos and lectures throughout this course. So we have two options to design our lab. Option one is that you have a computer, a desktop or a laptop at home. That computer could either be running Windows operating system or Mac operating system. Then what do? You install a virtualization software on it. So this way you don't have to lose the main host operating system that is right now running on your computer. The virtualization software allows you to run a multiple operating system on top of your main operating system. So the virtualization software, there are many of them. The main two ones are VMware Player and Oracle VirtualBox. These are the two free virtualization software that you could use to set up your lab. Once you have any one of those two downloaded and installed,
Then we'll go ahead and create our virtual machine on it. That virtual machine will allow us to create and install our Linux operating system on top of that. So that's our simple first option. The second option that you could use is the same way that you have a desktop or a laptop at home running Windows or Mac. And then instead of installing a virtualization software on your computer, you could actually create an account on one of the cloud services that are out there. The cloud services could be either AWS or Google Cloud or any of the cloud services that give you a free account or free access to create virtual machines with the resources that you need. So once you have that, then we should follow the same way. We'll create a virtual machine on cloud services, and then we will install the Linux operating system over that virtual machine. So these are the two options you have. You could pick either one for this course, and any of the one will work. But for if you wanted to follow exactly step by step that I'm going through, that I'm going to pick option one. But I have provided instructions for every steps that I have listed here.
Cannot install Linux operating system. That Linux operating system could be anything. It could be either CentOS, Red Hat, Ubuntu, SUSE, Fedora, or any Linux flavors. All the tips that I am going to tell you in this lesson applies to every one of the Linux operating system. So here are a few troubleshooting tips that you should know about if you are having installation issue. One is look for the exact error message and search for it online. Meaning, when you have a error message that comes up while your installation fails, simply copy that error message and look it up online. 9 out of 10 times you will see message shows up when someone actually had a problem, similar problem, and they posted that, and someone replied back with the resolution. So that's what you have to do. Second thing is, if an error message specific to the vendor, meaning if it has a number associated with it, then look it up at the vendor site for any KB article. KB meaning knowledge base articles for the known issues. So many times what companies or third parties or operating system vendors do, they create records of every time there's a bug or there's an issue with the installation or with the operating system, and they assign a number with that bug or with that issue. So if you search for that specific number on their website, you will get the answer. Then validate your installed media. If you have a physical media, meaning a physical disk, make sure there are no scratches on it. If it is a virtual disk, then make sure it is downloaded completely and validated with a sum check. Sum check is a tool that you could download from the vendor's website that allows you to validate that media is correctly installed or is correctly downloaded or not. Moving on, make sure the computer has enough resources. So the computer where you are actually installing the operating system, make sure if it has enough RAM. Meaning, of course, it's not going to work if you have a virtual machine that is carved out for 8 meg of memory. Those days are over, right? So also make sure it has enough disk. If you have a disk space, let's say 2 gig, most likely it will fail because nowadays the operating system requires at least 1 to 2 to 3 gig of disk space in a computer to install all its files. Then if none of these works, try to reboot your computer. That always works for me, because sometimes something is stuck in your computer that is not allowing the new programs to get downloaded or installed. Or if it is a virtual machine, most of the time the virtualization technology is not letting you to install the operating system, so try to reboot it. If it's a virtual machine, then try to recreate the virtual machine as well. meaning delete the virtual machine and recreate it. If it's a physical machine, then make sure the ROM drive it is actually reading your physical disk can actually read it. It happened one time with me when I was trying to install an operating system and it just not reading it. Finally, I realized the ROM drive was having an issue. But if it's a virtual drive, I mean, if you have an ISO image and you have attached to your physical system through ILOM or through iDrag or any management console, they make sure there are two steps to it. One is it is attached. Second, that it is mapped. So many times what people do is they attach it thinking that it will now kick off the installation. It, it will not work. So make sure you do follow the second step, which is mapping the drive. So there are two steps to it. So remember all of these steps, try all of them, and I'm very sure 9 out of 10 of these steps will work for you. Good luck. Virtual machine running slow. Yes, you have probably heard that slow word many times, and most of the time you see, hey, the machine is running slow, not just virtual machine. So, but before we get into the machine, we'll find out why a virtual machine runs slow. There are many reasons for a virtual machine to run slow. One of them is memory allocation, which means that how much memory has been allocated for specifically for your virtual machine, not the machine of the entire server, just for your machine. Does it have enough memory to run the required application? Same thing goes for a CPU assignment. Does the virtual machine has proper CPU cores assigned to it that could run all the functions that it needs? Network. Now, some virtual machines have 1 gig of network depending on its host. So if the host only supports 1 gig of network, then what? The virtual machine will get 1 gig. But remember, there are networks in the host environment that are 10 gig. But by default, the virtual technology or virtual platform that you're using can assign 1 gig of network. You could change that. If you could go to the setting and you will see that, hey, the virtual machine setting is 1 gig. The host setting is 10 gig. I could have that changed to 10 gig as well. Then storage I/O. The storage I/O is something that is attached to your host server. It could be external, could be internal. You could check that out from the storage team. Now, I could show you real quick how the virtual machine performance can impact by not having proper resources. So let's take an example of my first Linux VM. I have it here, it's power off right now. So if I go to setting, I will see right here in the systems, I will see that this system has base memory assigned only 1 gig of memory. And processor, I have 1 processor assigned. Now, if I wanted to change that and improve the performance of this virtual machine, I will change it to 2 processor or 3. Or same thing with memory, I could change the memory to whatever the memory that I want. But anyway, I don't want to change that, so for now I want to cancel and go back into the settings. So that was about system, memory, and processor. Same thing goes for storage. What type of storage you have attached to your system? Is it going to go to its local storage or external storage? Then network part, I was telling you, the network adapter is usually, my machine is using 1 gig, but if you are in a corporate environment, most likely it's using 10 gig. So right now, if you see right here under the advanced, it says 10 Intel Pro 1000 MT. It means 1 gig. So if you are in corporate environment, of course you're probably not going to see the Oracle VirtualBox. You're probably going to see VMware or OVM, or depending on the licensing your corporation has, you will see a 10 gig there. So by default, when you create a virtual machine, it assigns 1 gig to it. So you could change that to improve the performance. Now this is about the virtual machine. Now another way a virtual machine could run slow is if you are running on a hypervisor and the hypervisor memory is running out. Meaning, what if your hypervisor, this is the hypervisor right here, or host, which runs the virtual machines on top of it, what if it has 16 gig of memory, and you are given 2 gig of memory, and there are other 8 machines that's also given 2 gig of memory. So 8 times 2, 16, and you're given 2 as well, so that makes it 18. The server only has 16. How can it handle 18, right? It will be a problem if all the machines are running simultaneously. So just make sure that's not the case. Same exact scenarios go for CPU utilization. If your server does not support, the base server does not support enough CPU, no matter how many CPU you assign to your virtual machine, it will not function properly. And the last part goes the same way. If your network adapter on the host is 1 gig, then you cannot have 10 gig on the virtual machine side. So there are a few basic troubleshooting conceptual troubleshooting steps that you should keep in mind. Of course, we'll cover more about how we could troubleshoot technically a virtual machine if it's running slow in the next lectures. Cannot access server. Now, this is the most common issue that every system administrator or engineer have faced or will face sometime in your life. And I would say not just sometime, but these are the type of issues you will face almost like every day or every week. So what happens when you pick up a phone or get an email from someone saying, hey, I cannot access server A or server B? So how do you resolve it? So the first things before we start getting into any technical type of issues, we have to ask ourselves some of the common sense or conceptual questions. And there are 3 things that you need to keep those things in mind. 1, you need to know the source. Always ask whoever is asking you or whoever is complaining that the server or they cannot access the server. You need to know from where they are trying to access it from. So that would be a source. Second thing you need to know is the target or the destination server. So from where to where they're trying to go to. And the third thing is the protocol. Like which protocol are they using to connect from source to target? And those protocol, a few of them, and examples that I have listed here are SSH, SCP, FTP, website, NFS, Samba, database, and many, many other applications that has their own protocol. And if you know, protocols have their own port number. For example, if you are going from source to target using SSH protocol, that SSH protocol will use port 22. If you're going through a website, if you're trying to access a website from server A to server B, meaning from source to target, then you have to make sure that it is connecting to port 80 for regular web traffic or port 443 for secure web server traffic. So anyway, you need to keep these 3 things in mind always and ask these questions to the person who is telling you the problem. So how we could start troubleshooting these? So first thing you need to do is find out, is it the source or is it the destination that is having the network connectivity problem? And how do you know? You start from the source, from server A, which is trying to connect to server B. Source, how can you check? There are a few things that you could check. One of them is physical connection. So if a user is trying to connect to a server, just make sure that they have a physical connection or they're onto their laptop, or if they are on a server, just make sure the server have network connection, actual physical connection. I know I'm putting that in. It's a very little thing that people overlook, but it has actually happened with me as well when we try to connect from one server to another, and next thing we know, there are no cable connections. Anyway, so that's one thing. Second thing, check your own server network connectivity. Meaning if you are on server A, which is a source server, try to actually ping other websites or other servers and see if it's actually your own server. Try to ping your own default gateway. So if you are on a network of 192.168.1.x, then most likely your default gateway will be 192.168.1.1. So try to ping that default gateway. As soon as you get to your default gateway, another website, then what do you know? Your source server is perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with it. Then what do? You try to find out if there's something wrong with the destination. How do we check the destination? Now first try another server on the same network, meaning if you are pinging a server that is on 10.110.120 network and your server is on 192, then try to ping another server that is also on the same network. Or if you could get to it, try a different network. So this way you will find out that it's not just that network, maybe it's just that computer is down. Then third thing, as I mentioned earlier, you need to check the protocol. Check service functionality from S, meaning source, to D, which is the destination server. So log into the destination server and check service functionality. What does that mean, service functionality? It means that if you are trying to connect from server A to server B, and server B is the one that is actually running the web server, and you are trying to access the web services, then maybe that web server or that Apache server is down. So you see my point? I'm not saying that the whole server is down, but there is a service that runs on that server. That service is down. So you need to check if the Apache server is down. Or if you are trying to connect over NFS, see the NFS service is running. So you need to log into that server to find that out. And then you have tools like ping, telnet, or curl to actually check from server A to server B or from source to destination. If you do not want to log into server D or server B, which is in both cases, my example, both are destination servers, then from the source server you could run a command like ping or telnet to check if the services are running. Primarily, telnet is the main command that will work because telnet space IP space the port number will tell you exactly if the service is listening on the destination server. Anyway, just to wrap it up real quick, I just want you to know the three basic things: source, destination, and the protocol. Always ask the person who's reporting an issue. Always ask these three questions, and I'm sure you'll be able to resolve that issue within minutes. Who is who? This is a very basic thing that everybody should know about whenever they start troubleshooting any issues. So of course this is one of the basic fundamentals of a conceptual troubleshooting, to know who is who, meaning where the problem is coming from. So first look at our client. Any machine that is trying to connect to another machine, that machine is called a client. When it goes to the other machine to request something, that machine is called the host. You're going to hear these names interchangeably back and forth: client, host, server, or a different type of server that is hosting those services. So you need to make sure what is the difference between each one of them. Client talk to the host through many different protocols, which we will talk about later. If the client wants to talk to the host and wants to access the website, they go through the protocol which is HTTP, and so on, many other protocols that is involved. So take an example of like a person who, like a regular people who want to go to a restaurant. They go to the restaurant. So for them, the person who's going to a restaurant is the client, right? Client for the restaurant. When they go to the restaurant, they have a host, or who actually, there's a seating host, there's a host who actually comes on the table for the water, there's a host who comes in and take your food information, what do you like to order, whatnot. So you see that restaurant is actually serving you. So the restaurant in this case is a host, and the person who's requesting is the client. Now coming back to our IT world, we'll look at a client as someone who's a requester, where the call goes from A to B. It's a requester, initiator, who actually initiate the connection to the host server. and of course in a regular way or regular simple language, a pair, someone who is actually, for example, if you have a computer, you want to go to Facebook. What do? You actually open up a browser. So the browser is kind of a client, a platform that allows you to connect to the host. And the host has what? It's a server, it's a running a web server, it could run NFS, DNS, SendMail, or any kind of application. That is the reason you connect from client to host, right? Otherwise, if you do not get any of that information, or if you are not trying to access some of the information online, then why do you actually need to connect to the host to begin with, right? So that is why every time a request is initiated from client to host, remember that there's a client that actually has some type of tool installed in it. For example, if you are trying to connect to the Windows server, you would need a RDP client. If you're trying to connect to a Linux machine, you would need an SSH or PuTTY client. So you do need some type of tool to connect from client to host. And the reason I included pair here is because if you are, let's say, connecting to a DNS or NFS, there are companies, of course, who charges you for storing your data. For example, OneDrive, they give you some drive space to keep your files, and they charge you for that. So in that case, you become a pair, and they are the server. So this is what you need to remember in Who's Who. This thing will serve you a lot better down the road. If you have this concept clear, then you will become a proficient in troubleshooting any type of issues. Sounds good? So let's talk about the next step of actions when you have a ticket or someone reaching out to you and telling you that they cannot connect to a website or an application for that matter. So this is the topic where we will cover about how you could go about troubleshooting when you cannot connect to a website or application. But please remember one thing. Many times people will reach out to you and tell you, hey, my server or that server is down. Now you need to ask whether the server is down or the service that runs on that server is down. Many times people don't know the difference between that when they cannot reach a website. For example, they cannot reach google.com, facebook.com, or they cannot connect to the database. They will say the server is down. Well, in fact, the server is not. Instead, the application that runs on that server is down. So let's see how we could troubleshoot this type of issues. So first, what we have to do is ping the server by host name and IP address. That is something we learned in the previous lecture, that the first thing you have to do is always ping the server. So now this is before we're getting into like a website or application. Why we need to ping the host name and IP or IP is because if the application that we are trying to troubleshoot is running on that server and that server is actually down, then regardless whether the application was running or not, it will actually come down with the server. So we will see how we could troubleshoot. So I'm gonna log into my Linux machine. Oops, not that. Sorry. Okay. This is my Linux machine. Okay, so first thing I have to do is ping the server by hostname and IP. So which hostname that I need to ping? Well, of course, the hostname that you're trying to troubleshoot. In our example, we'll pick google.com. So I'll do ping www.google.com. You see, it is pingable. Perfect. So that is the first test that we fixed it, that it works. Perfect. Now, if you are not getting a response from the host name, then what do? You ping the IP. How do you find the IP of the host name? You do ns lookup www.google.com, and you will see your DNS will resolve that host name to an IP address, and this is the IP address. So let's ping that IP address. So 172.217.7.4, and you could see you can ping. So you could ping from the host name, you could ping by the IP address. It means the server is up and running. Now we need to get into details about how we could troubleshoot the application that runs on that server. So let's get back to our slide, and the next step we'll see is if not pingable. So we just pinged it, right? If it is not pingable by hostname or IP address, then what you need to do, you need to go back to my first lecture that we talked about, how we could go ahead and troubleshoot issues like that. Next one is if it's pingable, which we just tried. So perfect. If it is pingable, then we need to connect to a service. The service command would be telnet, the name of the IP, and the port number. Every service that runs on a server always will have a port number. Why they have a dedicated port? Because a server can run multiple applications. So if you have a server, it could run a web browser, a web server, it could run a database, it could run an NTP, it could run NFS, it could run SendMail. These are all the services that are provided by your server. So of course, when you try to connect to your server and to any of the services, you cannot use that one IP because one server will have one IP. Then how do you connect to the services that run on that server? So they have come up with the idea of picking ports and giving those ports to every service that runs on that server. Okay, so if you wanted to learn more about the ports, how they came up with, or how they are assigned, I would say you could look it up online. You'll find tons of information. So what we are troubleshooting here is we are trying to troubleshoot that the website is down, for example, or the application. But for now, we'll just keep on website. So in order to verify that, we have to run this command telnet, IP address, and port number. And on my right-hand side, you'll see I have listed where each command does for. Now we will run that, of course, on our environment in my Linux machine. So I'm gonna bring up my Linux machine again, and this time I'm gonna run the command telnet right here with the IP address. So telnet, the IP address 172.217.7.4. Let me just clear this or hit enter. So I could show you clearly 172.217.7.4. You're probably thinking, why am I using IP address? So IP address is the best way to use. If you type if you fat finger a host name, you could end up getting not connected, and you would think, oh yeah, it's not reachable. So it's better to use IP address. Now you will need to use port number to see whether you could connect the website on that server. Let's hit enter, and now what do you see? You see the telnet command not found. Most of the time when you have a new Linux server, Linux distribution running on your environment, you will not have the command telnet installed on your server. So in order for you to troubleshoot further, you have to install that telnet command on your machine. So if you go through the sequence, we'll see if telnet command are found, then what do? You do yum install telnet. Okay, so we'll do yum install telnet. But of course, make sure your machine is connected to the internet and your machine can reach the Red Hat repository or CentOS repository. If you are running satellite, again, just make sure you are connected to the satellite. So let's go ahead and install telnet. It'll go out, it'll look for telnet package, and it'll come back with any information that we need. And I'm sure you probably know about the yum install. And it's asking the total download information, what it needs and what not. So I will go ahead and click on Y to install. Install, yes. Okay, the telnet is completed, so you could just run just telnet to verify if it works. See, it works because you are in the telnet mode. You could get out by typing quit. Now you could run that same command, but so you could, if you're running bash, if you're in a bash shell, you could just hit up arrow key. That will bring back your command that you ran earlier. So we'll do telnet IP address of the Google and port 80, and we'll hit enter. And you'll see right here it says trying, so it tried, and it says it is connected to this. When you get this message saying connected to this IP address, and then you get escape character is this, it means the service on the target server which we are trying to troubleshoot is running. Your test is completed. It works, so it means the service is running. That is perfect. If it was not running, then you would have probably seen that access refused or access not connected or some type of error message for that matter. So if it's gonna stay like this, it's gonna be it's gonna stay there for a few minutes. You could wait until you get your prompt back, or you could just type control and bracket, which is right above the enter key, and it will give you the telnet mode as again. So you could just do quit, so to get out of that telnet mode, so you could get your prompt back. Perfect, nice. So we say that telnet command not found, so we ran and installed the telnet. Next thing, if connected, it means the service is running. So we have confirmed that the service is running, meaning the Apache server or whichever the application that is serving or that is running on port 80, it is running. If it was not running, if it was running and you connected, but you still, the customer still says, or your client still says, hey, I'm still having problem, then what do? Then there must be something wrong with the client machine, meaning the machine they are on. Maybe they don't have internet access, or they are not on the correct network. So you could ask them to actually try to connect to a different server, try to connect to a third server, and I'm pretty sure they won't be able to connect it. So in your case, if you are troubleshooting your own server, then try to connect to a different server to see if you could connect. And I'm telling you, 9 out of 10, your system will not be able to connect to other servers either. Alright, so then what happened if you try to do telnet with the IP and the port, and it comes back, it says if not connected or cannot connect to the service, then it means that HTTP service or that Apache service is not running. Then what do? You log into that target server where that Apache service runs, or where that database service run. You log into that server, and then you start that service. Or you could troubleshoot why that service is not running, for whatever the reason that service is not running. And to do that, you could actually simply look for that process. So if I wanted to see if my NTP is running or any process is running, I could do ps -ef grep for NTP, and you'll see right now it's coming back, there is no NTP running. So if you wanted to see what other process you have that are running on your machine, you could come in here and you could see there are different processes that are running. So let's say right now if I wanted to see if my network manager is running, so you could do ps -ef grep -i network. Just type network. You'll see that the service network manager is running. So just like that, let's say if you are trying to troubleshoot an issue of SSH, you logged into the console, but you wanted to see why you cannot connect to the server. So you will do ps -ef grep SSH, and you'll see right here the SSH daemon, it means it's running. If it was not running, then you would have to go in and restart that service. So it's all about service, how you could connect to the service, how you could troubleshoot the service, how you could use different tools like telnet to connect to a service, not the server. So keep that in mind. These are the few steps that we need to follow. Try it different ways. And again, let me know if you're still having issues and you can't figure it out. All right. Thank you. Cannot SSH as root, or you cannot log in, meaning you could connect to the server, but when you type in your username and password, it's not letting you in. It's a login issue. So again, this is type of related of access issue. When people say, I cannot access the server or server is down. Again, you have to find out whether the down means they cannot connect, or they could connect but they cannot log in, or they could connect, they could log in, but then they cannot connect to a service. So there could be many things. So we are getting into more and more details. So this way you know how to troubleshoot. This lecture is more toward or more geared toward accounts and login. So let's see how we could troubleshoot these type of issues. So first thing, what do we have to do? Always ping server by host name or IP address. We have done that many times, so we're not gonna do that. So what happens if the server is not pingable? What do? Of course, you go back to the server not reachable lecture, the very beginning one that I mentioned. It has all the listed instructions of what you should do when a server is not pingable. So I'm sure you have accessed it, try it out. Then if the server is pingable, then what do? We connect it to the service. So the user is saying, I cannot log in. Okay, maybe user is not even getting to the point where it's giving the login prompt. The only time you will get a login prompt to a server when the server or the target server where we are trying to connect to have the SSH service running, or telnet service is running. Well, by the way, nowadays nobody uses telnet, so I would just stick on SSH. So if you are connecting from one server to another using SSH protocol, then you have to make sure the destination or the target server has SSH program or daemon running. SSH program or daemon runs on port 22. So we will ping, if it's pingable, perfect, then we'll try to connect to the service using telnet, which we already tried that. We know how does that work. Perfect. Alright, so if connected, so it means, what does it mean? That means that SSH daemon is running on that target server, so you don't have to worry about that service. It's running, it's perfectly fine. What could be the reason? So now you are getting the prompt, the login prompt, but you cannot log in. Keep one thing in mind. If you are logging in as root, most of the time or most of the companies have root access disabled by default, meaning you cannot log into a server using root account, directly root account. You would have to log in as a regular user or local user, then become a root user. I have seen many companies practice this type of a rule or this type of policy. That's fine. It's perfectly fine because it actually secures your system. So not anybody could log in as root. So what we need to do is we need to check for permit root login in etc ssh sshd underscore conf. Alright, let's go into my machine. This is my machine, my Linux machine, and let's suppose this is the machine where user is trying to connect to, or this is the target machine. So the user cannot connect to the machine using root account. Alright, so let's verify if the user root is permitted to come in directly. And how do we verify? We'll go into cd etc ssh. Then there is a file called sshd underscore conf. So we will do vi sshd underscore conf. Hit enter. This is a big file, so most of the time what I do, I search for specific parameters that I'm looking for. So to search in a VI editor, you type slash, which is right below the question mark, and you will type look for permit root. Just hit enter. You don't have to type the whole thing. Hit enter. And it will bring you exactly where that parameter is defined. So you look at it and you'll see right here it has a hash in front of it or comment in front of it, which means this parameter is not enabled or not defined in this configuration file. So what does it mean? It means that root has access to come in directly. If I had this as uncommented and from yes to no like this, then it means permit root login no. Then it will tell you right away that root is not allowed to log in directly through SSH. So you either have to make it yes or completely disable this parameter. Okay, so you come in. Let's undo whatever we did. So you come in and you notice permit root login is yes, but that parameter is disabled. It has comment in front of it. Perfect. So I could log in as root. Perfect. So what else could be the problem? Why can't I log in as root? Then most of the time, or I would say 9 out of 10, you are putting in a wrong password. Or I will tell you right there that username or password do not match. So you have to make sure you are putting in the right password, or you probably don't have typed in so many times the root password that it has locked you out. So you could go into whatever that happened, or whoever tried to log in, you could go into cd var log, and there is this log called secure. See right here? Secure. I just did ls minus ltr, or you could just do ls minus l, and then you could go through by the alphabetical order, and you see this is this log. This log has all the information about any user who comes in, how many times they have tried, or how many times it has failed, or whatever happened to the user activity. So you could do user secure, and you'll see all that information right here, and you could tell, oh, see, this user, whoever is coming in, they're trying to log in that many times. As you see right now, I am logging in. The last session that I had, it says session open for user root. By UID, this is a UID for the root. If I had typed in a wrong password, it would have put it in the wrong password. So let's try if I could do that. So I'm going to duplicate this session. While I'm duplicating, I'm going to just tail this secure file, so you'll see what message will come up. So I'm going to log in as root, and I'm going to put in a wrong password. As soon as I put a wrong password, you'll see in the secure file it says password check failed for user root. Authentication failure. See, this is where you could come in and you could check the log for secure of people who are trying to log into your system and is failing. And you could also see failed password for root from this IP address. So anybody who is trying to come into the server, their IP is also recorded. So this var log secure log is very useful in terms of security. Make sure you look into it more often and see who is coming in and how they are coming in and how many times they have tried. Anyway, you could control C out of it now. Now let's go back to my slide and we'll say root is not permitted. We have checked the parameters. Next one is if root is permitted, everything looks good. Then what else? User does not exist or has no login shell. Meaning, if you are trying to log into the server using, let's say, ifzol, and you're saying, hey, the user, I cannot log in. Why? Well, one of the reasons is probably there is no local root ifzol account exist on the server. So if I have an account, let's see, if a user trying to log in with a user ID, let's say ifzol, and I will come in, I'll do ID ifzol, and it will tell me the user ID ifzol group ID exists. Perfect. So it means it is there. But if they are trying to log in with some different name, let's say PFSL, it will tell you no such user. Then you could tell the user or the issue that you're having that this user does not exist. Why you are logging in with that user? Okay, now if that user exists, then you still cannot log in. Then what will happen? Well, most likely, then your password is incorrect, or you have no login shell. What I mean by no login shell, if you vi the file /etc/password and hit enter and go to the user ifsol or whichever the user that you're trying to troubleshoot, you will see it has the username and all the fields. Different field means different stuff. Anyway, the last field, anything that is separated by colons is actually a different field. So last one, you'll see it has bin bash, which means that I do have a bash login shell. So I don't have to worry about it. That's not the issue. But if it had something like this, has been no login, it means that the account account is there, but that account is not allowed or not authorized to log in. So you will know right away why you are having that issue. So that's also one of the things you need to keep in mind. Let's moving on to our third troubleshooting step, which would be the user account is disabled. That is also very likely that when you try to put in a username and password and you forgot the username or forgot the password and you try a few times, it will eventually lock you out. And those lockout parameters is defined in pam.d parameters and etc configuration files. So we could look into it later on, but you could also go in right now to find out if you could find it, well, after how many retries the account will be locked. That's one way. Second, maybe your account is locked. It's not locked, but it's disabled. So how do you check if it is disabled? So we'll go into our machine, and if you do vi etc password again, and let's go to ifsol. Right here, if I put in a hash or something else that will take out the entry, or I believe there's also in etc password there's also bang or something like pound that will tell the etc password that this user is disabled right now. You could do that, or there are commands to disable a user. So whatever the command is, we are not talking about that, but we are trying to see if you could find anything before your name. If ifsol is there, there might be something in front of it that tells you the user is disabled. So make sure that user is not disabled. Moving on, so now we checked everything. If the service is running, service is connected, we went through the all configuration. But what if you ping and telnet to that IP with port 22, which tells you the SSH daemon is up or not? If you're not connected, then what it means? That means that SSH daemon is not running. Then what do? Well, you cannot log in that machine. Then how are you going to start the service? The only way to start the service is that you have to log in through console. If you have a physical system, then you have to come through its console. Like Dell has iDrag, HP has ILO. Similarly, if you are on a virtual environment, you could go to VMware console or VM console, and then you could log in and start the service. So again, log into the server and start the service. This is about the lecture about not able to connect through SSH as root and user and hopefully server purpose. Again, you have any question, let me know. Firewall, which is one of the most important topic that I wanted to talk about in this lecture. As firewall, its name stands, firewall is actually a wall that keeps away the fire or keeps away or protect your system against any kind of intrusion or viruses. That is why we have a firewall. Now remember two things. One is there is a firewall at the network layer, which means the network folks actually have a a device, a physical device that runs the firewall application, which actually protects the entire infrastructure. Now, there's another firewall that every server that you install, whether it's Windows or Linux, that has a firewall. That's the firewall we need to talk about in this lesson. So in previous lectures, we have talked about when you cannot connect from server A to server B. What do you do in the troubleshooting? You ping the server by hostname and IP address. If it's not pingable, of course, as I said, you could go back to your lectures to the one that I talked about, not reachable. If it is pingable, we'll connect to the telnet with the IP and port. If the telnet command does not exist, you would install the yum telnet command. If it is connected, it means service is running. Then is something wrong with your own client machine. Check that. Now that is where we have our machine. Sorry, that's not where we're gonna have our firewall. Keep moving to the right side. Now, if not connected, which means you're trying to connect from server A to server B, and as you're getting a connection refused, you log into the server and try to see if you could start the service. Nice. You have started the service. Everything is working as per the plan. Now you're still having an issue. What could be the issue? Now here is something that I'm adding it here that will help you, trust me, significantly when you are troubleshooting issues. And that is a firewall. Every time you're trying to connect from one machine to another and your connection is being dropped or refused, or even if you're running the command, this telnet IP and port, and as a response to that command you get a message that says connection refused, it means right away you could tell that the service, actually, let's say HTTP service, is running, but the server itself is actually refusing the connection for me to establish. Then again, it's 9 out of 10 times that's a firewall issue. You have to log into the server and either disable the firewall or do the configuration in the firewall to allow the traffic for that port. So this way, when server A goes to server B, it will able to establish that connection. So let's log into our machine and let's see how we could access our firewall. So let's say if this is my Linux machine, I wanted to make sure the firewall is not running, or if I wanted to know the status of the firewall. If you are using Red Hat 6.5 and older or 7.5 and older, I believe you will have the way to check the firewall you would do is service, IP tables, status. Because IP table is the name of the service that runs on the older version of Red Hat. And you run, by the way, now this has been replaced with Firewall D. So first let's check IP table status, and it will come back and it says redirecting you to the newer command, which is the newer command of systemctl status IP table service. This is a new command that is used in Red Hat 7.5 and above. So let's run that command and let's see what it says. It says unit IP table service could not found. So now we know this IP tables is not running, or somehow that service is not managed by the systemctl. Let's try to run ps-ef and grep for IP tables just to make sure. Nothing came up. Whatever that comes up is just this, is actually trying to grep itself. So when you run this command and you get the output as follow, it means it's just grepping the grep. Okay. So now we know IP table is not running. Now next thing is check Firewall D, which is a newer service that is introduced in Red Hat 7.5 and above. So for that we will do system CTL Firewall D. No, that would be systemctl status Firewall D, and hit enter. And that's where you will see it says the Firewall D dynamic Firewall daemon loaded, active, and it is running. So if you have that active and running and you cannot connect from your server A to B, you know right away, I have found a problem, I need to disable that firewall. So how to disable it? You could just simply run the same command, systemctl stop Firewall D. Once that is disabled, check the status again, and you will see it says that it is loaded, meaning it is enabled, but its current status is it's inactive. Now when the system reboots, the firewall D will become active again. If you want to make sure it does not become active at the boot time, what you do is you run systemctl. Instead of start or stop, you type disable. Now this is disabling it. It says remove symbolic link, which was pointing to the service. That's where you started on. So now you know for sure the firewall D is disabled. Now when you try to connect from server A to server B, it will work. So the whole point that I'm trying to convey here is make sure your firewall D is disabled on the server or on the target, on the host where you're trying to connect. Alright, thanks. Server is not reachable, or many times people will refer to as a server is not pingable, or I cannot connect to the server. So now let's get into some technical side of the things. We covered most of the conceptual things, so now let's get into where we could actually run the commands and actually troubleshoot by logging into the server. So when you get an issue where someone reports that server is not reachable, there are a few set of rules that you have to follow that I'm going to show you one by one. First thing is you have to do is you have to ping the destination server, the server that is having the issue. Ping is the command that is built in within your Linux operating system. In any flavor that you have in Linux, ping comes pre-built or pre-installed in your server. So you have to bring up your computer and run the command ping followed by the server name. So let's do that. As an example, I have my Linux machine up and running, and it's my Linux machine name is my first Linux VM. Now the first thing I wanted to do is, let's say someone says the server A cannot connect to server B. So that what is the name of the server? Of course they will give you the information. The server B is XYZ. So in our example, I will do is I'll ping Google. Ping google.com. So this is the first thing you have to do from your source. This is your source computer, and you are going to your target or destination computer, which is Google. So you go ahead and run ping google.com, and as you could see, you are getting the result back, which means 64 bytes from this, and it is coming back and it's going and doing an ICMP protocol, and it's going to Google and asking, hey, are you there? Are you there? And Google's server comes back and says, yes, I'm here. I'm here, and you are getting a response back. Perfect. So that is the first thing you have to do. Now going back to our set of steps, second is if the server name is not pingable. So you run the ping command, and you are not getting a ping return. So what do? Let's look at our machine again, and we will pick something. We'll make up something that will not going to pick. So I will do ping Google. Instead of .com, I'll do google.cp. I know google.cp doesn't exist. It doesn't have a server, or there is no host or DNS entry for it. So I'll go ahead and ping it, and it says, ping google.cp name or service not found. So now the next thing is you have to do is, it means that there is your name. The DNS entry for google.cp does not exist. So you have to find the IP address of this destination server. So if the server name is not pingable, then ping the destination server IP address. And how do we find the IP address? There are a couple of ways to find the IP addresses. Of course, first you go into your own documents, go and find out what is the IP address of the server that is down, and then you go in and ping the IP address. Now, let's say if we know the IP address of Google, so and we need to find out the IP address of the Google, we'll do nslookup. nslookup is another command or tool or utility that tells you or that translates you hostname to IP address. So let's do google.com and hit enter. You'll see it will return the name of the server and the IP address of the server. Okay, so now you go ahead and ping 172.217.10.14. Hit enter, and now you see it is pinging that server by the IP address. If you do the same thing to google.cp.com, google.cp only, then you'll see that it is saying that I'm going to find the DNS information for that, but I cannot find it. It says server can't find google.cp. Yes, because of course it doesn't exist. So let's go back to a set of instructions. Ping the destination server by IP. We did ping it, and it was pingable, so it means there is something wrong with the DNS. So now it says if IP is pingable, then it means something wrong with the name resolution issue. So what the next step that we need to do? If we could ping from the IP but we cannot ping through the name, then what we need to do is first we need to check the etc host file. etc host file is the file, a local file in a Linux, or there's also etc file in Windows as well, but the path is not etc. So that file is actually keeps the record locally of a host name and translate it to the IP address. So if I do cat host, you'll see there is an IP address of my local host, meaning my local computer. If I ping localhost, you see it is pinging my local host with that IP address. So I will go in and I'll check, do I have an entry for the server that I'm pinging in my etc host? If it's not there, then what do? Next file you need to check is etcresolve.conf. Is your server really has a DNS that is actually going and resolving it? So to verify it, you do cat etcresolve.conf file. This is where the DNS server information is saved. So we are telling my machine, which is this machine, that every time you need to go out and resolve a host name with an IP address, then you need to go to name server as 192.168.1.1. This is the name, or this is the IP address of my modem or my router. This is all. This IP or this modem also serves as my DNS server, my local DNS server. So it is telling it every time you need to resolve something, go to this. So I have verified it, it is there. Now, every time when you need to resolve from hostname to IP address, there is another file in your Linux machine. Do you remember the file? Okay, if you don't, the next file you have to check is called etcnsswitch.conf file. What does that file does? That file is actually tells your computer, hey, whenever you need to resolve hostname to IP address, I will tell you to first go to the DNS server or go to etc file, or wherever you have to go, I will tell you where to look for. So let's see what cat etcnsswitch.conf file says. When you go in here, you'll see, if you go scroll up, right here it says the password file is the local file. Of course, this is not what we're looking for. Here we are saying that we are looking for host. If I need to resolve a host name with an IP address, where should I go? And my computer, my server says, hey, first you need to go to files, which is what? My etc host file. First, go into that file and see if you could find the hostname to IP address. If you cannot find it, then the next thing you need to do is to go to DNS. Okay, I will go to DNS. Now, who is my DNS? Where should I go to ask how to resolve hostname to IP address? The DNS server to find it is where? It's right here, etcresolve.conf. So go etcresolve.conf. We already covered that, and that is where it will go to find the hostname and IP address. Coming back to our set of instructions, if IP is pingable, then it means something is wrong with your name and resolution. So you will check all these files. Next thing, if IP is not pingable, so you pinged with the server name, you pinged with the IP, nothing is working, you cannot ping. Then what could be the issue? Well, ping another server by the name and then by IP. Maybe the server we are trying to work with is actually down. So regardless you ping with the host name or with the IP server, it is actually down. So what you do is you could try to ping another server in the network to see if you could reach other servers. So first try with the name and then try with the IP address. So I'll go in and I will do is I will ping, instead of Google, let's say I'll ping yahoo.com. And I'll say, hey, yes, I could ping it. Perfect. So it means there is nothing wrong with me or my computer. My computer can ping other computers or other servers. There's definitely something with the Google or your destination server. Next step is check if your server has an IP address. So if you cannot ping another server, meaning if you're trying to ping another server, let's say yahoo.com, and you cannot ping that, then definitely something with your own server. So check if your own server has an IP address. How to check that? You run the command ifconfig. The ifconfig command is the command that gives you the IP address of your own computer. Yes, you do have an IP address, and yes, you could get onto the network, so which you have confirmed already. That is perfect. Now the next step is ping your gateway and modem IP. So what is my gateway? So most of the time you could find your gateway information by doing netstat-rnv. When you hit enter, you'll see the gateway is right here. So now the next step is see if you could go to your gateway, and gateway is the one that actually is going to let you go out and ping other server. So I'm going to go ping 192.168.1.1. Hit enter. Nice. Okay, I could ping my gateway. That is perfect. So now the question is, if I cannot ping my gateway, or even if I could ping my gateway, but I could still cannot go outside, or I cannot ping Google, or I cannot ping Yahoo, then what? Then the last thing that I have listed here is check physical cable connection. Yes, it does happen. It happened, and I've seen it a few times. You need to go to your own server, this server that you're logged in. By the way, you won't be able to log into this server anyway if your cable is disconnected. But I'm just saying, just in case, let's say if you are connected on the console, or it's your laptop, you're logging in straight to your laptop, then check the physical connection, or check your Wi-Fi network whether it's working or not. Along the same line, going one step back, when you are pinging your gateway, you also have to verify that your gateway traffic or your routing is also set correctly. How do you check? You run the command netstat-rnv, hit enter. You need to make sure all the traffic going to wherever it's going, because you see right here the first column says traffic, wherever are you going, whichever the IP address you're going. Every time you have to go outside, you have to go through the gateway from 192.168.1.1. That's what it's telling it, and it's telling it gateway. Just think of gateway as actually the gate to go outside. So when you have that set, then it means you are all good. If you do not have that set, it means you do have an IP address, but somehow you cannot go outside because you do not have a route. So if you are leaving your house, for example, you know how to leave your house, right? You know there's a front door. You could leave from the front door. But if you do not have that, if you do not know where the front door is, then you cannot go anywhere, right? So that works the same way. You have to define where your front door is. And the way you could define it, you could define it in this routing table. If this is not set, then you have to, there's something wrong with your routing table, and you have to run some routing commands to set your routing table, and then it should work. Terminal or client is not working. Well, that's something that you also hear sometimes from the people, or your own self. You're trying to connect from one server to another. Now, first, let's find out what is a terminal or what is a client. So, what is a client? A client is something that allows you to connect from the server that you are on to another server. That client could be, in our example, is PuTTY. There are also many other clients that are out there that you could buy, like CRS and TerraTerm. There are many of those clients that actually allows you to connect from one Linux or one Unix machine to another Linux or Unix machine. So one way to connect is through those clients. The second way to connect to that client is if you already have a session or a Linux machine running, then the client that you could run is SSH. That's the actual command that can be used to connect to the other server. So at that point, that SSH command is also serves as a client. If you are telnetting to another machine, then you would need a telnet command, and many times people will refer that telnet as a telnet client. If you wanted to have that telnet client in Windows machine, you could also actually install that telnet, and it will show up as telnet client. Anyway, this whole lecture is about telling you why we cannot log into the other server when your terminal or when your client is not working. So first of all, we will look into our PuTTY machine, and this is our PuTTY client. So one thing you guys have to make sure is when you come into this PuTTY, you would have to put in the IP address and host name here. If your host name, if you cannot connect with the host name, then you would need to try the IP address. Second thing you need to keep in mind, the port is 22 because SSH only listens on port 22. If you change it to port 23, 24, then you're probably gonna, pull your hair, and then you're gonna say, hey, I am putting in the right host name, I'm putting in the right IP address. Why can't I connect? The reason you cannot connect is because the SSH does not listen on any of the ports except 22. Then the connection type at the bottom, you'll see there are different type of connection: raw, telnet, R, login, SSH, and serial. If you notice, every time you change it, let's say if I click on telnet, it will change to 23. If I change it to R login, it will change to a different port. If I change it to SSH or serial, so make sure SSH is the one that is connected and the port is connected to the right one. Then you have save session. That's where you put in the IP address, and then you could click on open. That's one way. The second way that we could do is by going into our Linux machine that we have it up here. This Linux machine is about how we could connect from one machine to another. So you need to use the command SSH, and followed by what? You need to connect to the IP. So I could connect to myself in this example. So if my IP is 192.168.1.34, then I could do SSH 192.168.1.34, and you'll see it will connect me to myself. It's opening up another session, and I am logging in. And now it's telling me I am logged in. So that's how you connect using SSH. You could also type it in a different username by putting in -L and the different username, let's say IFSol, and instead of it logging in as root, it will log in now as IFSol, and I will provide my password for IFSol, and when you do who am I, you'll see it's logged in as myself. If you make a mistake in SSH, syntax, that's when you're gonna have a problem, and that's when you're gonna say, or you're gonna see to yourself saying client or terminal is not working.
Hello everyone, and this is your instructor again, Imran Afzal, and in this in this lesson, I'm going to cover the issues that you might be facing connecting to the Linux through PuTTY. Now, I do have a few students, very limited students, who did experience some of the issues when they build the Linux VM, they install the operating system, and then when it comes to the point when they use a PuTTY session to connect to the Linux machine, they are having issues. So I'm going to quickly cover what could be the issues, or how what are the steps that can be taken to resolve those issues. Some of the issues, the primary ones, is the NIC setting on the Oracle VirtualBox. So if you go to Oracle VirtualBox and go to network, and there is a NIC setting that you have to make sure it is selected and it is configured the right way. We'll cover that later. Then the advanced setting on the NIC on the same Oracle VirtualBox setting, that will also covered here as well. And the third one is if the network interface is down at the operating system level, which means that your NIC setting is perfectly fine at the Oracle VirtualBox level, but on the operating system, the interface itself is down. So you will have to bring it up or restart it. And the last one would be the SSH daemon is not running on your Linux operating system, which is very, very highly unlikely, because by default, when you install Linux operating system in your machine, the SSH daemon is running. But anyway, I am covering this just in case, just to make sure that you have went through all the different troubleshooting steps. So I have my Linux machine open. I'll go over it and we'll cover all of these steps one by one. So this is my Linux machine that's already up. Now the first thing that I have mentioned is NIC setting on Oracle VirtualBox. So now what is the NIC setting? If you go to Oracle VirtualBox, which is this window, and from here you select your Linux machine and then go to setting, and then there is this option called network. In this network option, you have this adapter 1. It says enable network adapter. Make sure this is checked. The reason you don't see on my Oracle box not checked or grayed out is because my machine is running powered on. If you power it off, you will have this enable network adapter checkbox option available to you. So make sure it is checked. The next thing you have to make sure is that you have host only adapter selected. Now we have different options that we'll cover. First one is host only adapter, which means that you could connect only from your PC or on your laptop where you're running this Oracle VirtualBox. You'll connect from that PC to your Linux machine, and you cannot go out on the internet. And then on the name side, you have a VirtualBox host only Ethernet adapter. There is no other option, so by default you have to select this one. So when you have this host only adapter, then you click OK. Then you go back to your machine and then you type ifconfig or IP, whichever the command that is available to you. You hit enter, then you'll see ifconfig. The first interface that we are concerned about is this one, and this is the part that you have to look into. The other two, LO and VIRBR0, just ignore that for now. I have covered these two interfaces in my module 7. You will learn that in module 7 what are these different options are used for. But anyway, for now, just focus on this one, which is ENP0S3. And if you notice right here, the iNet right here, it is the IP address of my Linux machine that is given to me. And also you have to verify that this interface is running, up and running. And if you have all the settings correct until now, but you still do not have an IP address right here, which would be in a case like this. If you do if down ENP 0S3, hit enter, and now if I do ifconfig, you'll notice I do not have that iNet IP address, right? So if that is your case, then what you have to do is you either have to restart your network service or simply do if up enp0s3. Hit enter. Once you hit enter, you'll see the connection successfully activated. Now when you do if config or IP, then you'll see that you have an IP address 192.168.56.101. That's one way of doing it. The other way, you could simply restart your network service. The command to do it is systemctl restart network.service and hit enter. It will bring down your interface and bring it back up, and then you run if config and you'll see you have this IP. Now by default everyone should have the same IP address, so you could just go into your PuTTY machine, PuTTY terminal, and then you input the IP 192.168.56.101, and then you could simply click on open, and there you have your login prompt. So that's how you actually create a connection between your PuTTY session and your Linux machine. So let me open up a new session here just in case. Could go on to the other one, so just close it. So once this is closed, so now the second option I wanted to cover is this one. It says advanced NIC setting. So what is advanced NIC setting? Sorry, one more thing before I go to advanced NIC setting. Let's go to the other setting now. If you go to your VM and then click on network, there is attached to, there's another option. So now if host only adapter option is not working for you, that is fine. Don't worry about it. It's not the end of the world. Pick a different option, which is bridge adapter. Pick that one. Now in bridge adapter, as soon as you select bridge adapter, it's gonna give you a different option for the name, which is Intel R dual band wireless. Now my laptop right now is connected to the internet wirelessly through the Wi-Fi. So make sure if that's your case, then you select band wireless. If your machine, your PC or laptop is connected through the Ethernet cable, which is a physically wired cable to the modem or router, then you will pick the Ethernet connection. This is the one which is the wired connection. So you'll pick that. Anyway, I have the wireless, so I pick wireless, and then you click OK. Once you click OK, then you come back to your Linux machine and then you do the same thing. You restart your network service, which is systemctl restart network.service. Hit enter. And you got your prompt back. Now type IP config, or sorry, if config. Hit enter, and now you will see you have a different IP, 192.168.1.8. Now this is the IP your Linux VM is getting from your modem in your house or at your work. Now you could just simply go again into your PuTTY session, and now you could type 192.168.1.8 and click open, and it will give you the prompt back. So this works the same way. The only difference between host only adapter and bridged adapter is that bridge adapter will allow you to communicate outside on the internet. So if you wanted to download anything, or if you wanted to open up a web browser on your Linux machine right here, then you would need a bridge adapter. But if you do not want to go outside, you just wanted to have a communication between your PC, where you're running this Oracle VirtualBox, and your Linux machine, then you pick host only adapter. Now the third option I said that you could try out is the advanced setting. When you click on advanced drop down menu, make sure that Intel Pro 1000 MT desktop is selected for your adapter type. Now this is my adapter model that is inside of my laptop. You might have a different model that represents or your Wi-Fi card. So by default it should pick the one that is attaches to your card. Then promiscuous mode, leave that as deny. That's fine. That's a MAC address. You don't have to change that. Make sure the cable is connected, and then again, of course, you hit OK and come back here, and then you could try doing the same thing. systemctl restart network.service. Now, what is systemctl command? That is something that we will cover in module 7. The last one I have on my slide is SSH daemon is not running. Now, what does it mean? It means that when I go into my machine, all you have to make sure, but again, as I said earlier, this is the chances of this not running is very slim, but still verified. And to verify that SSH daemon process is running, you do ps -ef pipet and grep SSH. ps -ef pipet grep SSH. What the hell is that? Don't worry about it. Just run this command. You will learn this as you go on with my training. I just want you to test these and see if you get this output. And if you do get this output, especially this line that says user sbin ssh-d, this shows that your daemon or the process that is listening to accept your incoming traffic, it is running. So that is perfect. Now, in my case, it's running. In your case, it should be running. In case it's not running, then I would say that you do systemctl restart ssh. And when you hit enter, sorry, it's probably sshd. Yes. So it will start back again. It's the chances are very slim, but you should try that too. So anyway, these are the few troubleshooting tips. If you're still having issues connecting from PuTTY to your Linux machine, then don't worry about it. Just send me an email. I would prefer if you could send me a screenshot. That'd be great, and I will definitely help you.
Now let's talk about recovering a physical system. Of course, physical system is not as easy as recovering a virtual machine. Virtual machine is kind of a software which actually sits on top of a physical machine, and every time you lose that software, you could easily recover that or restart that software. Whereas in physical machine, it's actual the hardware where you actually physically touch that machine. If you loses that, then we have a very few ways to recover them. But first, we'll go over really quickly what we talked about in a previous lecture about recovering a file, about recovering a system, and what are the different ways to do the backup of the system, and then we'll talk about each one of them. So first, we have to make sure we have the backups, and the backups are like system backup, which is taking the entire image, the application backup, the database backup, the data file system backup, and the hardware backup. All of these backups still applies to the system, whether it's physical or virtual. Then we'll talk about the snapshots. Can we do the snapshot of the physical hardware? It is only possible in the virtual environment, but in physical you cannot take a snapshot. Then the live migration. Can we have a physical machine do the live migration to another machine? Well, only it's possible if you're running another physical machine right next to it. In the physical environment, it is not possible to have vMotion type of technology. Then the replication part. Can we do replication virtualization manager to manager? No, because this is not a virtual machine, so we'll cross out the virtualization. Storage replication. Yes, if we have a storage that is attached to the physical machine, and that storage, first of all, it's running on an external storage, which is again like an EMC type of storage, or Hitachi, which is external to the system, and there is a replication between those storage arrays, then of course you could recover it. Now, in terms of hardware physical disk storage, if you have RAID 1, then you pretty much have one disk and it goes down, you have a second disk. Now this topic is more of a disk recovery. I don't want to get into too much, so don't confuse the storage replication to the disk RAID replication. RAID is local, because if this whole system goes down, that local drive goes down with that. We're talking about the replication at the external level. Then we talked about the virtual machine fault tolerance type of technology. So in physical environment, we don't have that. So what do we have left with? We are left with hardware to hardware. And many times you have probably seen there's a technology or feature that is enabled inside of an operating system that allows you to do the clustering. In Red Hat, we do have Red Hat clustering. In Microsoft, we also have Microsoft clustering. It depends what type of operating system are using and what type of clustering they have enabled. Of course, you need one server and you need to have exactly identical server to be added in that cluster as well. So these are the few things that you need to keep in mind about creating the backups and how you could recover your physical system in your production environment. Recover virtual machine. This is the lecture where we are going to cover when you lose a virtual machine, what are the different ways that you could recover it. First, we need to know if a virtual machine that we have lost has any kind of backups. And if you are running any virtual machine or physical machine that is in production and has no backups, this is one of the biggest mistakes that everybody does, and when at times when a system crashes, then there's no backup to recover from. So make sure there are backups. What are the different type of backups that we could consider in terms of virtual machine, or when we creating a backups of physical or virtual machines? There are system backup, which means like we are creating the entire image of our system. So we could export that as an OVA file, which is a file that is recognizable in any virtual format, or we could take that like exact image using tools like Acronis or Magic Disk, or these type of tools that allows us to actually take the entire image of the machine that is running on. So that is more of a system backup. You could create that backups and put it somewhere on a different server, so this way anytime you loses a virtual machine, you could recover it from that backup. Then there is application backup. Application backup is usually the backups where an application or a third-party application that is running on a Linux machine, and at that point we don't really care about whether we lose a Linux machine or not. We only care about the application that runs on it. So if you are running an application, for example, Apache server or SAP application or any ERP application that we are running, we need to make sure the application and its configuration is being backed up. We could actually take those same configuration and put it on a different Linux machine and start it up. So that depends on how critical that application is. The third type of backup is about the database backup. If your machine is running any kind of database, then the first and foremost thing that you need to think about, how can you create a database backup? There are many different tools, third-party tools that you could run. For example, for Oracle, there are like Oracle Data Guard that you could use, and there are other tools that you could use to do the database backup. So in the database backup type of scenario, if you lose a virtual machine, you're not losing the data that that runs on the database. So you could install the database on a newly created virtual machine and then do a restore of all the data to the new virtual machine. Then the next one we have is about data or file system backup. When I talk about data, this is not actually the database data. This is the actual data that sits on your operating system. And the files, like the files that you create on user home directory or etc directory or any var log messages type of files or directories that you need to talk about. If you have any type of configuration file that is important for your system, and you think you could losing a virtual machine, you could lose all that file system configuration files, then you need to use a tool like dd command to create the file system backup. Or you could even use a different type of backups that are available on the virtual platform. There is Commvault, there is Veeam. There are different type of backups that can be used, backup solutions that can be used to do your file system backup. Then of course the hardware backup. If you are running your virtual machine on a single hardware, meaning a single hypervisor or a single host, you lose that host, you lose that hardware. Then if you're running 4 virtual machines on top of that hardware, you lose everything. So make sure you have a redundancy at the hardware level. Then the next thing about having to protect a virtual machine is doing a snapshot. A snapshot is not a backup. However, it does provide some type of protection against the loss of your virtual machine. It's used when you are trying to make changes to your configuration file, installing packages, or trying to deploy some kind of code. It is always a good idea to take the snapshot of the virtual machine before you make any changes. When you start up power on your virtual machine after the changes and it does not come up, then you could actually go to the virtual machine virtual machine management console, whether it's a VMware or Oracle VirtualBox. Then you could actually restore from that snapshot. Again, taking snapshot before making any changes. This is the wise idea before you make any changes. Then let's talk about live migration. Some of the virtualization platform, of course, this live migration is a licensed feature that you have to pay for. In VMware, this live migration is called a vMotion, and it actually runs with a feature that is enabled as HA and DRS. In OVM platform, there's also a live migration. You have to purchase a licensing for that as well. Migrating VM from host to host, this is what it does is if you have 2 hosts in your environment, meaning 2 hypervisor, and they are combined together to provide high availability, then the virtual machine, if a first ESXi server or hypervisor goes down, the virtual machine can easily migrate from that host to another host. Then we'll talk about the replication. The replication is another way where you could recover your virtual system. There are 2 types of replication. One is the virtualization manager to manager replication, which usually happens site to site. So what is a virtualization manager? Any type of management tool that actually manages your virtualization platform. In VMware, that virtualization platform is called vCenter. In Oracle, it's called OVM Manager, Oracle Virtualization Manager. So you have to have that replication enabled at that level. The second type of replication that you could do is the storage level. So if you are running a storage in the backend that runs off, let's say, EMC, Hitachi, or any type of storage that you are running, that storage is being replicated by its own way, using its own tool. So if you lose a virtual machine, that is fine. You could always recover that if you have the storage replication in the backend. Then there's another feature called fault tolerant. Fault tolerant means you're running 2 virtual machines simultaneously, but of course one virtual machine is active at any given point. You run one virtual machine on one host and the other virtual machine on another host or another cluster. If a virtual machine goes down, there's a feature that sits in the middle of those 2 virtual machines that kind of does the heartbeat, and then it will actually bring up the other virtual machine which is in passive mode to active mode. And this is about the VM replication from one host to another. So these are the few things that you need to keep in mind whenever you need to have the virtual system backups and how you could have it recovered. Of course, you cannot recover it if you have none of these solutions sitting in your environment or enabled in your environment. So keep that in mind. If you do not have them, talk to your storage guys, talk to your VMware guy, or if you are the one who managing your virtualization environment, go through them and see which ones in out of this list that you have enabled in your environment.
If you want to learn more about Linux, check out my best-selling course on Linux at udemy.com, or you could go straight to my website utclsolutions.com and you will find the exact same course there.